here in time traveling, as you know, different time zones, different areas. This is not about comics. We're talking about wormholes
Yeah.
and physics because we are all in different time zones.
It feels like it.
Aside of that,
Rising right now.
what?
The sun is rising right now where I'm at.
Oh, here it is.
Wow.
This
Okay.
is, it's starting to go down. That's why I, see.
Oh, okay.
I like to put the light on because it's 6. It's 5 here actually. But, still in the winter and all that. So
Yeah.
what time is it for each of you? For you, Laura, it's 11 a.m. I think.
Yes, 11 a.m. Yep. So I'm still just waking up.
Yeah.
Same with you?
9
You on the coast?
Yeah, 11 for me too. I've already done all my morning routine stuff, walk the dog, all that kind of stuff.
I walk the dog for the afternoon walk.
Oh,
Okay.
so you walk. You're
Because
already
it's 5 years. I always do it before the chat so he's relaxed. Because if not, as the race he could be jumping on me every 2 seconds.
That's true. Yeah,
Little like
very true.
non-stop. You know dogs, so you know what it is. And what about you, Kelly? What time zone are you in?
It's 9 a.m. for me. Ruth, are you in America?
Yeah, I'm in Canada.
What? I didn't know that. I'm in Canada too now.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
You live in Canada. I thought you lived in like California or something.
No, I lived in Portland, but I moved to Calgary October 2018.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
You like it?
Yeah, I've been in Ontario for like 4 years now.
Nice.
Yeah,
I thought you'd be in Ireland.
We have been debating about moving to Canada ourselves. My husband is Canadian, so that's an option. That's on the table.
In fact, Laura was going to say that luckily Trump wasn't reelected because if not, you could be
Yeah,
asking these two.
all packed up. Yeah.
You could be asking these two live, literally right now. Like,
You're knocking on
how
the
is it? How is it
Yeah.
Canada? I am trying to move now.
Exactly.
Anyway, before we start, for all of you, as I always say every day, please wear your mask.
Yes.
Care about
Absolutely.
people.
Every time you're out.
Don't
not.
be assholes.
Yes.
Masks are not meant to protect you, are meant to protect others from you.
Correct.
You're a spit.
Absolutely.
Let's
Yep.
speak
Yes.
honestly and loudly. You just spit even if you don't see it. And that can get people killed. And even not killed, chronic illnesses. There's people that 6 months after the fact of getting COVID-19, they still have lung problems, encephalitis, even arms and legs, with problems. So please, don't be assholes, care about each other, and wear your mask. And last but not least, as I always say, if you think your freedom is too important to care about anybody else, because that's what you really are doing, not caring about anybody else's safety, leave this fucking channel now. I don't want you here.
Good. Yes. Thank you.
With all that said, hello, Laura. How are you? Hello,
Hi.
Ruth, and hello, Kelly. How are you?
We're good.
Good.
How's things in your neck of the woods? Are things getting better, worse, more or less? No, Amazon, I'm not going to go to collect that package. Leave me alone.
Toronto's real bad right now. I'm currently in a very small rural town because a friend of mine who's high risk wanted to escape the city, but dealt with disabilities, so she needed physical support. So I'm here to support her, and it's been quite nice not having to be constantly worried, even just walking my dog. Because there's no one out here, so I can walk in without a mask, which is amazing because I don't see everybody. But Toronto is really bad. I also have a side job where I work at a specialization school, and that's just not happening right now, which is a bit of a shame for all the dogs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So how's Calgary?
Calgary is not good. We the city, and I live in the city, and the city above us, Edmonton, are become pretty big hot spots. It varies from time to time, but the premier, which to Americans is basically like a governor, he runs all of Alberta. He's extremely conservative and just creates a bunch of excuses for things. And so it's really frustrating because a lot of plans that are in place in other provinces aren't in place in Alberta because of the premier. So
that's frustrating.
I stay inside a lot. It's cold, so that's easy. But I do walk him from time to time, and I participate in a farmers co-op that happens every Thursday. They deliver vegetables every Thursday, so I go down to the common room area in my neighborhood to pick those up. That's I feel like I've turned into more of a hippie after leaving Portland, which is just bizarre.
Yeah, you just absorbed it all into the subconscious, and now you're like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, I participate in farmer co-op share. Like, what is that? So, but I know the farm where my eggs come from, and I follow them on Instagram. So.
That's cool. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, which means I'm in the South, which means I'm surrounded by idiots. But no, I live in Atlanta, really. No, I'm kidding.
Move to Canada. Move to Canada.
Yeah. Atlanta's great, though.
I feel pretty good about the area of town that I'm in. Like, generally speaking, our neighborhood, Chamblee, which is sort of northeast of Atlanta proper, is pretty COVID conscious in terms of wearing their masks when they're out in public. But there's always the individualist who has to protect their rights and reveal their faces. But I mean, America is awash in cases right now, and Atlanta is no different. And my husband and I we work at home all the time. He actually, he's an Apple employee. He just got a full-time position with Apple Care, meaning he's no longer a store employee, so he doesn't have to ever worry about going back into the store. Yeah. And since he's got some pre-existing conditions, we don't want him going in the store. So this is a very good move for him. And I have an office space off-site that I share with a couple other artists, but I haven't been there in months and months and months.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't have any plants there, so that's good.
Oh, good. Yeah, you'd have to save those.
But,
I'm a plant mom too.
I do have a dead plant over here right now, but that's my own fault.
My husband's back in Toronto, and I keep checking in with him, like, "Hi, how are you? Also, have you watered my plants?"
I watered this one. It's just dead. I'm very bad at it.
Sometimes they just don't like the space.
Yeah. Just or me. I'm not good with plants.
Don't worry. We stopped trying ourselves with the plants. Every single time we tried the balcony, even with the kid, she tried once for an experiment to school. She's 6.
Yeah.
He died. So we were like, you know what? This is not our thing. Let's just leave it.
My sister and brother got the plant bugs from not the bugs, but the plant gene from my parents, and they have gorgeous gardens and plants, and they do all kinds of things and grow all kinds of stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, I have a brown yard, and that's okay.
Wait. Did you just say all kinds of stuff?
All kinds of stuff. They legal, but they do grow food. They do. My mother and my sister both had vegetable gardens and herb gardens. And I tried a little bit. I did actually grow 3 tomatoes this pandemic summer. Yeah, tomatoes. But that was pretty much.
I tried convincing myself that I could keep my tomato plant alive in the winter.
Oh.
And it lived for like 1 month. And all of my friends here were like, "You're crazy. They die in winter. Like, you're not gonna." And it grew like 2 more tomatoes after I brought it in. And then
wow.
So now I have a monstera in the pot. Lasts forever.
Nice.
Yeah, I think only like super science can make a tomato not be a perennial or annual.
So hard.
Yeah. My tomato plant tried, but I just didn't I was like, "You're on your own, buddy."
It was almost dead by Thanksgiving, and then, like American Thanksgiving, and then and then it died. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very bad.
Well, as Laura said, there's something about science. Here in Spain and Almeria, where they shot all the Sergio Leone movies with Clint Eastwood and all that. In the desert,
right?
Yeah,
they grow a lot. They call it like the the greenhouse Amazonas in Europe, because they wrote a lot of stuff there in greenhouses in the middle of the desert.
Oh wow!
That's all based on science. So it's crazy to try to grow things, in Atlanta in the winter, because it is crazy. Let's be honest. You can make it happen. It's just science.
It is. It is science. I'm not interested in though. I'm not a plant person.
That's fair.
I'm happy to take care of cats and critters, but I just can't do plants. So I do want to do a shout out to Victor, who is from Colombia, which is where I was born. Hi, Victor. And I haven't been back there since I was 9, but that's cool. It's nice to see you. Hi, everybody.
You will be back. You will be back. Adam Glass is telling me, thank you, Adam. These ladies are classing you up. There's only one thing. That's impossible, Adam. They have no class whatsoever. So that's not going to happen. Look at that. Look at that. And then Chris, of course.
Yeah, we're really classing up the joint here.
That's you guys. That's you guys. Just there's class in there. It tries to get in here. We just don't allow it. Well, I don't. My wife does. When she's around in that table, the class.
There you go.
It absolutely disappears, like Sub-Zero. Anyway, as we were saying, if my name is Victor Frankenstein, nice to meet you. I'm your doctor. It's Rotring pen. That's your syringe.
There you go.
I cured the pandemic. It's over. Absolutely over. We can do whatever the fuck we want.
That's right. Awesome. I love it.
So you can leave now. I can tell you. Okay, what's the thing that you've been dying to do since the pandemic started? And you say, now I'm free. First thing I'm going to do.
Okay.
Kelly?
Oh man, there's a lot of things that I want to do.
We have time. We have time. You can tell them all.
I miss concerts so much. Like going to live music. I miss music so much in my life. And like a lot of the people that I listen to, they've been putting out like 5 song like records, like little EP kind of things. Or they've been doing like live stream live concerts, and it's just not the same.
It really isn't the same. Yeah.
I miss seeing my friends who tour, and I weirdly miss conventions. I weirdly super miss conventions, and like even like little zine festivals, where only like 50 people or 50 to 100 people like showing just their self-published work. I miss that so much. I miss museums. I just miss like art and culture. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So also I moved to Calgary in October of 2018. So I moved here, winter started. Then I had my birthday and was like, oh, well, I don't really know a lot of people here yet. So I'll just like go to the cat cafe and see Birds of Prey, and that was like around the week that everybody knew. It was like the beginning of March. So everybody knew like, oh, there might be like a pandemic, and nobody knew how bad. Obviously, nobody knew how bad it was going to be. So I was like, I'll do this alone, and I regret that. So
oh man,
I never have regrets in my life, and I super regret that because I was like, oh, I could have actually spent that time with friends.
Yeah.
Before the shit hit the fan, excuse my language, but like it was just like crazy. And so somebody asked like, what are you gonna do this year for your pandemic anniversary? And I was like, celebrate my birthday alone again. So I just don't know a lot of people here, so that I just want to go out and like meet people and go go on hikes with people I really know.
So, sure.
So in the end, it's seeing humans.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to see my family too. I haven't been able to because they live in the States and the border's been closed and it's not safe to fly. But I will definitely be going back to Seattle and Portland this year. Like that's a 100% promise. So.
Yeah, for sure.
My sister moved to Seattle, so
yeah.
Ruth?
I mean, a lot of the same stuff, like shows, restaurants, like being able to go out on a date night, that kind of thing. I definitely miss dog shows as well. Like I had just gotten into dog sports at the start of 2020, and then I suddenly couldn't compete anymore, and that was a drag. And group camping, I miss like solo backpacking and all that. That's really fun and everything, but sometimes you want to bring friends, and I can't probably for a while. I was also
now because again, you want to see humans, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I miss that for sure. And also I miss being able to go into thrift stores and browse and pick out stuff and try things on.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of like missing of people and I guess aspects of capitalism we are now cut off from.
I love the polite way you said aspects of capitalism. Like,
yes,
I want to go on a shopping spree, you motherfuckers.
Oh my God, there's a street in Portland that's all thrift shops, and when you said that, I was just like, oh, that's what I want to do when I go to Portland. I wonder if they still exist anymore. Oh
no! Yeah,
all these thoughts immediately.
Oh man,
Laura.
Well, I would really very much. This has been kind of a difficult year for me. More so because of the pandemic. Because my father died in November, right before the pandemic, and my brother-in-law died suddenly about a month ago. So I haven't been with my family nearly as much as I wanted to in these times when we were dealing with these losses. And so that's the first thing I would do is see my family again. And go to shows and go hiking with my friends and shop in places where I don't feel like somebody's going to breathe on me, or sit inside a restaurant and not worry about the air quality in the restaurant, or the airflow, and whether it's, whether they've cleaned their air ducts recently. I've actually been out to a restaurant a couple of times during COVID and sat inside in one restaurant, and that was because it was the only restaurant around near the hospital while my brother-in-law was in the hospital. So luckily we didn't catch anything. We masked up and did whatever we had to do to keep ourselves clean and safe as much as we could. But we were also in the hospital too with my brother-in-law. So I mean, we were in a lot of risky situations, but everybody did their jobs to keep ourselves as clean as possible and to avoid contact as much as we had to. But yeah, I would absolutely get my friends together and do something, throw a party here at the house. I'd have to clean it. Or just, go, like you said, thrift store shopping, or just go to anywhere that I can look at things and touch things with my hands and shop and do things. I'm dying to get back out on the trails. I haven't been out on the trails, even though usually my hiking buddy and I, we've hiked a couple times during COVID, but it's not the same. And because it's really hard to hike with a mask on. And I know we try to, we do try to keep 6 feet away from each other, but we also love to talk and laugh at the same time. And that's, so we just haven't very often. So, and travel. I want to go see other places. I want to go to the mountains. I want to go to, the Northeast. I want to go to Germany. I want to go to Iceland. I want to go to wherever I want to go. Yes,
yeah. You can say Spain.
I want to go all over Europe. I want
even to be polite and fake you're interested, but you can say Spain.
I would absolutely come and sleep on your couch. Yes.
Did it happen to you?
Traveling is such a big thing, and it was such a big part of our lives for so long, just doing conventions, that not even doing that, not even going to what I would consider to be a work trip. That's just off the table as well. And as much as conventions aren't vacations, they are still social events, and you do still have, a lot of social interaction at them. And I miss that terribly. I didn't think I would, because I'd gotten pretty burned out on conventions. But I
don't think none of us thought about it that way. We're gonna miss conventions because we took it for granted.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just another part of our jobs, and then something was not there.
The first show I did of this, the second, I think, was with Howard Chaykin. And Chaykin literally told me, it's not the shows what I miss. It's that thing when you are at a dinner with somebody, and somebody that you don't expect to see, that you haven't seen in years, suddenly goes up, sits down by your side, and you're talking like it was yesterday, the last time you were talking. That serendipity of the social part of it, of seeing your friends.
Yes, absolutely.
Colleagues, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And being able, I love walking through Artist Alley and seeing new artists and seeing all the cool new creations that people are coming up with, and the awesome merchandise that's out there. And I love buying little tchotchkes and stuff like that at shows. And I miss that. I miss all of the little pins and buttons and prints. I've got so many prints that aren't on my wall. And I just love interacting with the newer, younger artists that way, and saying, tell me your process. What are you doing? How are you thinking? How'd you come up with a story? Whatever. That's the part of the actual convention that I miss, is when I can get out from behind the table and be the attendee rather than the guest.
Mm-hmm.
To be to experience that side of the convention.
So, being completely honest, we don't miss the work part.
Right, yeah.
We miss the other part, right? Kelly?
What do you do?
Yeah, Kelly, I was asking you, if you miss all the parts of it, the work part included, and Ruth too, of course, or what we really miss is the other part of it, the social interaction, being with our peers and meeting people in a way.
Well, yeah, I never really viewed, conventions are work because they're like taxing on the body, and like if you have a table or like you're a guest at the show, then you're like required typically to do like a certain amount of panels and that kind of stuff. But that I never really considered that work so much as like as just like an opportunity to meet people that appreciate what I'm doing. And like that is so re-energizing, because when you work at home, you're in this like little bubble, and it's really easy to kind of be like, to get in this like headspace of like, what am I doing? Like nobody's gonna see this. Like, like, what is this all for? What are all these hours for? And then like somebody comes up and it like, when I worked on some stuff earlier with people who are like famous in the music industry, like I had teenage girls like crying, and it's like, okay, this is a bit intense, but like, wow, holy crap, like wow. This like team collaboration, like it means something to people. Like the stuff that we're doing actually is meaningful to a lot of people. And so like that's makes you feel like your job is like has a lot of worth, like a lot of
it validates it. Yeah, absolutely.
Ruth?
No, that's all. Honestly, I had kind of stopped going to conventions because they were so much like work in terms of like social energy and all that kind of stuff. But y'all are making me want to go back. I took for granted that they'd always be there, and I was like, I'll go back eventually. But maybe when things go back to pre-pandemic standard of human interaction, whenever that happens,
right?
Go again, because you're right. I do miss all the like the more one-on-one with creators stuff. I just have gotten like tired of all of the other hubbub around them.
Yeah, I get tired of lugging all of the equipment and I mean, it's not like I have a ton of merchandise, but I do have prints, and they weigh a lot and they take up a lot of space. So
that's not in like the travel or like the work.
Yeah, the actual like the slogging of the equipment and your setup, your table setup or whatever, back and forth through the convention halls. That's a bit, but much, and that's part of it really taxing. Yeah.
You can say that about the travel because it's not 18 hours for you like it is for me to get to the just say.
I think I have like more fond memories of shows too, because I only did one the year, like I only did one in 2018, and it was 2 weeks before I moved.
Oh, okay.
So my hometown show, like, well, I consider Portland my hometown at this point.
Yeah.
Behind you.
Yeah. So I miss it. I miss Rose City.
It's a really cool town.
And did you miss going back to Ireland, Ruth?
Yeah, I haven't been able to go back since I haven't been back since I got married because I was supposed to go back this past Christmas. Like we kind of made this deal where like I'll spend two Christmas in Canada, one in Ireland, and I didn't get to go this year. So now it's been like a long time since I was actually no, that's wrong. I was there. I was traveling with the friend I'm here with now because she was speaking at some conferences, and I went back very, very briefly for a couple days as part of that tour of Europe. But last October, or 2 October, before the pandemic, the October before the pandemic, so over a year ago. So I haven't seen my family in over a year. They're all in Ireland now. My youngest brother was living in Spain for a long time for school and everything in Malaga. But he's back in Ireland right now because he figured what's the point in paying to be in Spain when he could just go back home and still do the same course online.
That's can't argue with that.
It's been a long time I went home, but we'll see when I get to go again.
Hopefully before the end of this year.
Yes, that'd be nice.
I am optimistic that 2021 will be the year.
I'm pretty sure it will be. People keeps asking me about, because I also organize conventions, and people keeps asking me about, when are conventions going to come back, and I always say, I don't see it before the third quarter.
They
canceled the Olympics.
Yeah,
officially canceled the Olympics as of yesterday.
No. The Japanese government said it was a hoax.
What?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the Olympic Committee also said the same thing. Somebody said they had a source, and the Japanese government and the Olympic Committee they both said this morning, "What the fuck? No, that's not true."
Wow.
Wow.
She's a reporter for the New York Times. What? Sorry, Ruth?
I was saying, wouldn't the Olympics be next year anyway? Like 2022? They weren't going to be this year, were they?
No,
the Olympics were supposed to be 2020.
Yeah.
And they moved it to 2021
for a year.
Oh, okay. I thought they just like nixed the whole thing, and they were like,
"No, they moved them. They should have, just said move it for years, but there's too much money at the stake, so they just moved it to, like the World Cup. They moved it one year. So I don't think it's going to happen in July, to be honest.
I think
so I think they're going to have the winter. What they don't want is to have the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics at the same year.
Oh yeah, that'd be.
But it's going to happen in 2022.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if they're denying it now, I agree with Kelly. There's probably a source that has spoken, too early.
Yeah. It's like there's a Times reporter, a Japanese Times reporter who lives in New York, and she was like reporting on it. I follow her on Twitter, and I was like, holy crap! Like I even like retweeted it, being like, this is bleak. Like, yikes.
Well, they denied it, and it makes sense because they're still hoping, July can happen, and I still hope that some conventions can come back in June. Yeah, but it all depends on the pace of the with the vaccines. And we're seeing Spain has to stop administering vaccines because we don't have enough.
Right.
Pfizer is screwing up, literally screwing up. They some governments, Italy already has told they're going to sue them because European Union paid a lot of money for having an amount of vaccines on time, and we're not getting them.
Wow.
Yeah, Canada's having problems too with getting a vaccine that they already paid for.
Yeah, it's like the same case. Same case. Spain is like fourth in Europe, and we're saying we don't care we're fourth. We just want to vaccinate people.
Yeah.
Just public healthcare. That's the thing. We're going very fast, and there's not enough vaccines.
Wow.
And the European Union is really, really careful in terms of approving.
Yeah.
So we already have approved the Pfizer and Moderna. We don't have Oxford or any of the others.
Yeah.
So it's just we'll get them when we get them. But at the same time, there's not enough vaccines. So the problem at the end is we paid for them.
Yeah.
US paid for them. Canada paid for them. European Union, and we are not getting them.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, so I don't think we're going to get the Olympics in July because there's not going to be enough people vaccinated.
Right.
And then meanwhile, in the U.S., they're like, well, we have so many that they're just expiring and we're throwing them away instead of vaccinating people.
Yeah. Or just accidentally leaving the freezer open or something, and then just ruining an entire batch of them. So that's great.
Yeah, it's really wild. I've heard that like if you go with like a family member, like and they're like at the end of the day, then they'll most likely vaccinate you too, because people just don't show up to get their vaccinations, and they're like, okay, well, what are we gonna do with these? So they just like, oh, we'll randomly like offer it to other people that are there. That's the story that I'm hearing, especially like out of LA, that's what's been going on. But they're saying in Alberta that the general public, like the earliest I think is like May. But then if you look on the website, it says fall.
It's really up in the air for Canada. And like, is this part of the same problem? Like, do you remember back at the beginning of the pandemic, like last year, when apparently American agents were stopping and redirecting PPE supplies? Is this the same issue where they're like moving vaccine where it's not supposed to be and like stealing it basically from other countries? Or is it?
I don't know, but I wouldn't put that past our previous administration. However, our previous administration also didn't really do anything at all about the pandemic. So
they took it very personally.
Literally got rid of the pandemic response team.
The thing is that Biden has to change course in a big way, because remember, Trump rejected when Pfizer said you're going to get more vaccines if you want, and he said, nah, we don't need them.
What didn't they say something like Biden signed like 23 like executive orders yesterday about vaccines?
A lot of them were about the vaccine, about rolling it out faster, about about mask wearing in any federal or state things, asking the American public to mask up for 100 days, which, it's nice that he asks, but I'm sure there's going to be the contingent who won't anyway. But I am glad that the federal and state, or at least the federal employees, must wear masks. Absolutely must.
Yeah, and airports and all that. He signed another executive order to have, in any place that he can affect.
Yes.
That they have it. But you know what? What's going to happen is we're going to have all over the world natural selection.
Yeah.
Darwin is going to be right again. That's now is you have to wear masks. Whoever who says, okay, I'm going to do it. Good. Those who just say no.
That's right. You survive.
That's your fucking problem, you idiot. If you don't do it. If you affect me, I'm fine. If you stay on your own and you all die because you don't want to wear a mask.
Yeah, and there's innocents who end up getting sick, and that's the sad part.
Yeah, that's why I said, let's keep them separated.
Yeah, go over there.
Just stay there. Just stay there. In that big part of whatever.
Yeah.
Work together without masks. We want you to have your freedom. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was in Indiana. That was like a super spreader event. Just stay in that city.
Yeah, let's we'll give them a whole forest only for them. So they can stay together.
I had a discussion with another comic artist about the whole herd immunity idea, and I'm like, but that doesn't work until how many people have to die in order for immunity to become a thing. That's we've already lost at that point. I think the numbers were like at 250,000 people had passed away already. And obviously, that's not working.
No,
it's only like what is 500,000 the number?
It's 400,000 now. Yeah, we just passed the 400,000 mark.
Biden said 500,000 in a month.
Yeah,
reach 500,000. At least he's being honest. No, but England tried.
Yeah,
Johnson tried. The other moron, the other big moron. He tried herd immunity. Sweden tried open door policy. And it exploded in their faces big time. Look at how the UK has. They even have their own mutation of the virus.
Yeah.
And technically, America tried it too. They just denied that they were trying.
Yeah, they didn't make it an official policy.
England never called it. England never called it. We're trying to get herd immunity. They just looked the other way.
They just
and lost like 40, 50 days, which is where everything happened. And now they're like, oh, we are the best, we're vaccinating so fast. And it's like, well, you vaccinate so fast because you have most of the population dying. You didn't take care of anything for the first 4 months. Ireland is being much better on that. And in vaccinations, I saw the numbers today. Ireland is like the second or third country in the EU in terms of vaccinations. They're going really fast and really effective. So
they're doing a good job.
I think like the Taoiseach, I don't remember how to pronounce it. The Prime Minister in Ireland is just looking at the other side like this.
Like
our Taoiseach. Definitely. I think that Ireland is in a pretty good position that they have a relatively small population in a pretty small space and the wealth to do the same programs but much faster and effectively. And same with Canada basically as well. Like our cases were extremely low in the late summer here, and that was amazing. And then it shot up again when school got back to session.
It was Thanksgiving and like Canadian Thanksgiving, and then like everything shot up 2 weeks. And I did like an American Thanksgiving, and that they were supposed to that Friday. It's Thursday when Thanksgiving happens, and that Friday is when the like super lockdown was supposed to go into effect. So we looked at the regulations and we were like, well, what happens if it goes into effect early? And as my friends were driving over, there was like an emergency text message saying the lockdown's going into effect now. So but we met the regulations because I live alone, and the regulations here are if you live alone, you're allowed 2 people that are from the same household outside of your own. And it was my friend and her partner that came over. So it was like, thank God we met the requirements anyway. But she was like, I'm a student, like I can't get a fine. And I was like, so like you're 2 people. Like
that's I don't think there's ever been a discussion that I know of having the bubble, of the whole bubble thing where you have your own little,
they're my bubble.
We don't have a bubble. We have Randy and me, and we occasionally talk to my neighbor, and but over the fence, and I talk to her a lot. But anyway, we don't. Nobody ever said, okay, this is my bubble and these are my contact points and this is where I've been. There's been no checking up on any of that sort of thing. But then again, nobody I know directly within my circle has gotten sick yet. So, and I hope they stay that way forever.
But parents have been vaccinated now, though, so they've gotten the first vaccination.
Nice. That's good. That's good. My mom is 85, and she has been waiting so impatiently for her vaccination. She hasn't gotten it yet, but it should be any day now. So,
so my dad is is a doctor, so he's in the medical field too. He's above the age of 65, it's he had like 2 things going for him to get it.
No, now here we're moving. I think we're moving next week or the other to the second group, because first group was elderly people that are in residences, in nursing homes, and the caretakers and all the health and emergencies people in the country. And then we moved to a second group, which is that from 80 to 85 years old, and then to 70s,
Right.
Little as any group is really, really organized. But hey, Laura, Victor asked you. Hi, Laura. Didn't know that. Wow, in what city? Yeah. Which city?
I was born in Bogota, Colombia. My father was stationed there with the State Department, and we lived there for 2 years before coming back to the United States. So technically, for a few years there, I held dual citizenship.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Now we can start speaking Spanish.
No. I can understand some Spanish, but I definitely don't know Spain Spanish. And I'm pretty terrible as it is with
Spanish. Is Spanish, don't worry. If you know the curse words, you know everything. No,
that's not true. That's not true, because like Puerto Rican Spanish and Mexican Spanish are very different.
Very different things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, we can speak to each other and understand each other perfectly well. I could say that probably the most different Puerto Rican is a mix. We would call it a Spanglish in a way.
Yeah.
Because it has a mix. But I can understand every Spanish in everywhere. And if you need to think what's the most different, probably could be Argentinian.
Yeah, I can see that because
we use, there's a lot of words that we don't use anymore from old, not antique, but from Cervantes Spanish, to say in a way that you still use them in Argentina. For example, we say tú, you, and then Argentina just say vos. That's something that you never use in Spanish from Spain from centuries ago. So there's the things from the old Spanish that they use in Argentina still. So that's the more different. But we can speak to each other. Just have to be careful with, how's your mama? You don't say that in Spanish in Mexico. It means something different than what it means in Spain. So things like that. You have your Pan American Spanish dictionary. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Is that offensive? Yes, no? It's offensive. Okay, I'll say it anyway. And then you get
yeah, that makes sense. I feel like there's those correlations across English as well, where like fanny in Ireland means vagina, but fanny America isn't that offensive. Yeah.
But it's it's just, there's a model of car. It's called Hyundai. It's called Hyundai Kona. I don't know if you know it. In Galicia, I am from Galicia, Spain. With the Celtic part. That's why Ruth and I we're cousins.
There you go.
Galicia means land of the Celts, literally.
Yes.
So in cunt in Galician is Kona. So somebody had to tell Hyundai to change the name of the car. Literally, when they came to Spain, because they didn't know everywhere in the world is Hyundai Kona. Don't, it's like, why in Spanish it doesn't mean anything. It's like, not in Spanish, but in our language. And in our language, it means something. And I think you want to call your car that.
Wow. Yeah. It reminds me of the long ago when the Chevy Nova was introduced, and people were like, Nova, that means it doesn't go. It doesn't go.
Or the I don't know if you know any of the other ones, but Nissan Pajero.
The Pajero.
Paja in Spanish is, sorry for this jerking off.
Oh, okay.
So Pajero is somebody who jerks off a lot.
Oh my
and
god.
that's the name of the car. So Nissan,
that's funny.
What are the Japanese doing? No, I just looked up what Kona means, and it means powder in Japanese, which is weird because everybody just says powder. Nobody says.
No, it was Hyundai. It was Korean.
Oh, Korean.
Okay.
I don't know what it means in Korean either, but I know what it means in my language.
Wow.
And I don't think you want to call your car that. Just saying. Drunken Drop says, Karina says, in Japan, the COVID thing is really ugly right now, and the government is doing almost nothing.
It's so sad. It's so sad.
And Drink and Draw Costa Rica, hello there. Thank you for coming today. To the three of you, big hi from Costa Rica.
Hi, Costa Rica.
Victoria Q says, oh, nice. I'm from Barranquilla, a little far from Bogota. Ha, ha, ha. Really nice to know this. Amazing.
Yeah, okay. That's very cool.
Hey, what if we talk? Do you want to talk about comics, or we can just keep going? I don't care. We're having fun. So why did you get? Aside of masochism, let's be honest. Why did you get into comics?
Ruth,
Laura,
you go
first. Okay, me first. So I always. I always I grew up reading like a lot of European comics, like Tintin and Asterix and Obelix and all that kind of stuff. And then when I got to college, when I was in high school, I got into manga. And then when I got to college, I got introduced to American comics. And then I just kind of like was already into art because I was in college for animation. And then it was just kind of like right place, right time. And I was like, I have an interest in this. And just kind of fell into it.
Nice.
It's good. I was very lucky that way.
And why did you keep coming back?
Because I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Because like what had happened was I was making my own like zines and stuff and selling them at conventions. And then another artist, an Irish artist, approached me because they're like, oh, I've got this like small gig going where I'm like making comics for video game companies. Can you color it in for me? And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. I know how to use Photoshop. And then I did that and I was like, oh, that was really fun. I should see if that is a thing that I can do. And then I quickly realized that I can just color for a living and I don't have to do the whole thing. And then I met Jordi Belair and Declan Shelby in the Irish comic scene. And then they really showed me the ropes and were huge benefactors of mine in terms of like introducing me to the right people and showing me like tips and tricks of the industry and that kind of thing. So then I ended up like becoming a full-time colorist in my third year of university and barely scraped out the end of my degree and then have been working in comics ever since.
Cool. Very cool.
Kelly?
Well, I
don't want to talk about that.
No, I was thinking about where to start. I mean, I'm like a true kid of the 90s, right? Where like I grew up on like the 90s cartoons with like X-Men, Spider-Man. When I was 5, I dressed up as Batman for Halloween. I was obsessed with Batman.
Nice.
And then I don't know, I always did art growing up, in school, outside of school. And I got introduced to like, anime around the time I was like 8 or 9. It was in like a pottery class or something, and a girl's like, hey, my sister likes that stuff. It's called anime. And here, you want me to bring you Fushigi Yugi? Here's a bootleg tape from Japan that's been fan subbed, you know? And like, I watched it and was like, whoa! And then like the next year, I was in like, I think I was around like 6th grade or something like that. So a girl in my science class was like, my sister's really into that. You want to borrow an Utena tape? And so I just like started getting into anime, and then I started picking up manga. Pokemon was out at the time, so I got like some of like the floppies, and I got like a Sailor Moon floppy too. And like at that point in time, we were living in Augusta, Georgia, or Evans, Georgia, which is a suburb of Augusta, Georgia. And there was like one comic book shop, but it was like 30 minutes away. So it was like a big treat to kind of like go into town and pick up comics. And I just wasn't reading a lot of them. I didn't have money. My parents didn't want to buy them. And my sister's friend was super into comics, Sonic comics. And so she gave me one of them. And then like when we were moving, she gave me one. And then we moved to Houston, and Hot Topic came out, and I was able to pick up like a bunch of slave labor stuff. And there was one comic shop in town where the guy would like bring his dog in on Tuesdays to like when he was stocking stuff. And so we go in there. That comic shop is like long gone, unfortunately. But I would order my anime tapes through him too. So I have like Nausicaa floppies and get like my Fushigi OAVs from the dude. It was amazing, and he was really kind. And so I had a really good experience with comic shops initially, and which I think is very rare for like, you know, growing up as a girl. And I got really heavy into like The Crow and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and like all of that, like super goth stuff. And then and when I was in high school, by that time, I was like, oh, I want to do this. And so I drew like one sequential page, which was like a Crow knockoff thing. And I knew at that point, like, this is what I'm going to do. So I went to design school in Florida. I went to the Ringling College of Art and Design.
Yep.
Which is where I met Jordi. And we graduated from the same senior illustration teacher. And she was doing like these movie posters. And I was starting to like design a comic, and I did like the characters, the environment, like all of kind of the process work. But then I never ended up doing sequential pages through that entire time. And part of that was I was kind of pushed in a different direction, unfortunately. And I went off to teach English in Japan for a couple of years because it was the peak of like pretty much the peak of the recession still in America. And then I quit my job. I had applied to work for Jordy. We did a whole interview, everything. I did a test page for her. And then I quit my job and was like, what am I doing here? Like, why? I was still painting at night and stuff too, doing like commission work. And I was like, fuck it, I'm moving back to America, and I have X amount of money, I can get in the industry. And the day I spent like 2 weeks in England on the way back, because I'd always wanted to visit. And I was like, I'm getting into comics, like hell or high water, I'm getting into comics.
Nice.
And she emailed me the day I came back to America and was like, hey, welcome back to America. The guy who was working for me is still working for me, which is why I never got back to you. And do you want to work for me starting January 1st? And I was like, yes! In the industry. And I worked as like a flatter and then like her assistant essentially. And like fixing, like doing color holds where it would think she would do color holds, you know, and fixing really bad flats, and putting things into like a local palette. So instead of like Captain America being purple, it would be like blue, red, and white, you know. And I did that for a little over a year while her and Declan looked over my portfolio work. I was coloring people for free, going to shows, meeting people. And I went to New York Comic Con. I had tried out with Boom at the time. And then Michael Walsh showed a piece that I had colored of his. He was tabling next to Tyler Jenkins, who actually lives in Calgary. And Tyler was like, oh, whoa, like, I want to hire her. And so I started on Peter Panzarfaust at Image. So like that just kind of, everything kind of just spiraled upwards, I guess, at that point. For people seeing my work and doing it 8 years later. That's a hound dog for you right there.
There you go.
It might happen to me too, because my groceries may show up. So.
Well, this was mine. The insisting.
Oh, there you go. Yep, that was your delivery.
We're all gonna get packages. This is so funny.
Yeah. Bill O'Donnell says Sue is already said, but Laura is amazing. And Patrick Skybat says Laura's Thor run and says
with little hearts. Love. Thank you guys.
So Laura, this is your turn.
Well, it's my turn to talk about how I got into the industry. Well, I am as much as I don't want to mention how much older I am. My journey into the
because you're not. Remember these physics wormholes. There's no real time.
I'm 36. That's what it is. So my entry into comics predated the whole manga scene, and when it really hit big in America. I was actually in college in the early 90s, and while it was maybe in some areas of the US it was starting to pick up, but it certainly wasn't picking up in Orlando, Florida, where I was at the time. As a kid, I'd read comics, but it was usually the comics my mom would buy me, which was Archie, Mad Magazine, and all the little kid comics like, Casper the Friendly Ghost, Little Lulu, which, by the way, is a pretty amazing comic. If you ever can read, it's actually like breaks the fourth wall a lot and does some crazy stuff in there. But anyway, the Scrooge McDuck, all of those kid books. That's what I had when I was young. And then somewhere along the line, I found one of my brother's Conans, and it didn't have a cover, but the art was so completely different than anything I'd ever seen that to this day, I remember having, I hid that book in among my, Donald Ducks in my Little Lulus. And I would look at it and I was like, what is this? This is not cartoony. It's not cartoony. It's a half-naked man who's not cartoony. And I did, what is this world? I don't understand this. But I just, I associate it with my brothers. It must not make for girls, whatever. And, and my brother is significantly older than I am. He is 13 years older than I am. So that was grown up, teenager comics, and I was still in kid comics stage. But anyway, as I got into high school, all my friends were reading Uncanny X-Men, and I would share their comics and get, we'd pass them around, and I met superheroes for the first time. Of course I'd heard of Superman and Batman and whatever, but that's when I got to see the Marvel side of comics. But then in college, after I changed my major 3 times, I finally settled on commercial art, and figuring that I would just go into advertising, because that's what you do as a graphic artist. That's how an artist gets paid, is to go into some sort of graphic design field. I was working in Orlando and going to school in Orlando, and I figured and I actually interned at Universal Studios in their art department. So I assumed that when I graduated, I would just roll right into a position as a graphic designer. And then I was also working at Kinko's at the time, and my friend Ian Hannon, who was also a colorist for several years, and I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, he and I were working at Kinko's together, and we would talk about art, and he would argue with his friends about artists all the time. They'd get into the, who's better, Jim Lee or Frank Miller, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know who any of these people were. And so they were like, well, these are what comics are doing now. This is the image boom. And they showed me the image comics. And I went, oh my gosh, they're so colorful. And they don't look anything like that Conan that my brother showed me years ago. So, suddenly I was now aware of extremely colorful comics that I'd not seen before. Mm-hmm. And Ian, who had been a student at Ringling at the time, or maybe he quit by that time, I'm not sure. But anyway, he wanted to see my art. I was at UCF, at University of Central Florida. So we didn't know each other's art. We just knew that each other were artists. Mm-hmm. So I finally showed him my portfolio, and he's like, have you ever thought about working in comics? And up to that very, very minute, it never occurred to me that people do this for a living. I don't know why. I just never realized that you could get paid making comic books. I also had no clue that more than one person worked on a book. I thought, when you hear the name Jim Lee, I just thought, oh, Jim Lee does Wildcats. At the time he was working on Wildcats. Yeah. I thought he did everything. I thought the entire, every page was entirely him doing all the work. Yeah. That was my perception. I was absolutely obtusely naive about comics and how they were produced up until that very minute. Mm-hmm. And then Ian actually showed me, oh, here's the credits page. You see all these people? This is the writer. This is the inker. This is the penciler. This is the colorist. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, so a whole team of these people do this. And he's like, yes, there's a whole industry based on this. Imagine that. And I was like, so I don't have to be a designer. And he's like, no, you could totally try to be in comics. And I was like, well, howdy ho. So I talked to my dean, the dean of the graphic design program, because I was entering into my second semester as a senior, my second and final semester as a senior, and we had to choose our senior projects, which would take the whole semester. And we had to pick from this list of like 15 different things, and it would take us, it was like a big involved project that would take like 3 months. And I asked him, I said, can I make a comic book? And my dean was like, yes, I suppose you could. So I wrote like, I don't know how many pages of script, and designed the logo for and drew 3 pages of a book that was called Gatekeeper, which it now has an entirely different connotation. But at the time it was about the person who decides, who stands at the gates and decides who gets to go to, or stands at the gates of heaven and hell, basically. Mm-hmm. So, the Sandman story that I wasn't even familiar with at all, period, by that point. But yeah, I designed the logo. I penciled and inked like 5 or 6 pages and colored 3 of them, all in Photoshop. And the reason why I did that was because by the time I'd entered my senior year, Ian had answered an ad in the back of the Wildstorm comics that were looking for colorists. And at the time, this was 1994, okay? So there was no internet to speak of. There was no transferring files via any sort of internet. So when he applied for the job as a colorist, Wildstorm actually mailed him a disc with a file on it. And his requirement was to sit at a desk with Photoshop and work and color this file for 8 hours. He would have to be timed by somebody, and he would have to put the results, you know, the Photoshop file back onto this disk and mail it back to Wildstorm. These were SideQuest discs, and you know, they were like this big, and they actually had tape, and it was, yeah, we're talking, you know, prehistoric. Anyway, he did that and he got the job. So and I was working night shift at Kinko's by this time, and he and I would get on the phone, and he would actually tell me over the phone how to color. Like, you know, like, I asked him, why aren't you working in Illustrator? Illustrator seems to make much more sense. He's like, no, everything's in Photoshop. You're going to want Photoshop. Here's what you do in Photoshop. And I'm like, okay, now I'm literally like he's dictating to me over the phone how to use Photoshop, right? And how to use it specifically for coloring. So, and I would take that back to my classes, because I was in, you know, computer graphics classes as well as graphic design classes, where we actually cut Rubylith and did, you know, layouts and all by hand. You know, we had a budding, you know, computer arts class now. So we were working in Photoshop 3 on
Wow.
16 megabyte machines. Yeah. So we're talking early days. So anyway, I did my final project. I got an A, I graduated, and then within a few weeks, I actually flew out to California to visit with Ian and to see Wildstorm and to kind of see what it was all about. And it was a great trip, and they were still looking for colorists. So I actually sat down in their offices and did the test. And a couple months after that, they called me and gave me the job. So I had the advantage of working in a studio in an office environment with a whole group of colorists. I mean, I think there were like 22 of us at the time. On different
page.
Yeah. I literally would take a book, color it in like 2 days, because, you know, everybody would get a page, and it was, but it was done with guides. So we weren't just making colors up. Everything was done with paper guides. There was a color guide. The color artist was the person who did the guides. We were the computer color separators. So we just separated those guides. And that's how we could sort of get the books to look, you know, like a team had done them. And we developed this coloring style, this Wildstorm style, which we called cut and grad, which is kind of this very basic, you know, select an area, drag a gradient through it, move on to the next area, cut a selection, drag a gradient through it. And that's how you build up your shapes. So that Wildstorm image, I mean, Top Cow was also doing it, Extreme was also doing it. That became sort of that house style that was very quick to work in, and was kind of our color language, you know, during the time that I was there. So that's why our books ended up being pretty consistent, because we had a guidist and we all knew this sort of cut grad style. But that's how I got in.
Was Alex involved?
Huh?
Alex Sinclair was involved in
it was funny, because he was there before I got there, and then he came back, because I don't know if y'all know the story about Alex Sinclair.
You know the story. I know it, but please tell.
So Alex Sinclair began life as Ben Fernandez, and then he was whisked off into the what's the program, where they take you away and hide you because you're
witness protection. Witness protection.
Yes, witness protection. What? Yes. He went into witness protection for like 2 years or something, year and a half, 2 years, and that was when I came on board. So I didn't know Ben before, and then he came back.
Why was he in witness protection?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
You can't die.
Let's leave that out of the conversation.
That part I do not know. All I know is that suddenly this guy who used to be known as Ben Fernandez was back with a new name, and I still to this day have to kind of go Ben Alex.
Oh wow!
Because I know him as Ben. So
yeah, that's so interesting that they were allowed back to.
Yeah. Usually they're whisked away, it's done and over. But no, he for whatever reason, and I don't know, he was able to resume his life as a colorist. So yeah, I mean, I got the advantage of working with colorists like Ben, like James Rochelle, like Ian Henn, Jeremy Cox, who's still coloring, Justin Ponzer came in. Actually, he came in under me. I was one of his first trainers. Like, I don't know, just so many colorists that came through that studio and that whole department. And it was such a different entry into comics than what you two have come through. Although, I mean, working with Jordi Belair is about as close as you can get to a studio environment with a bunch of colorists. So, yeah, the big studios where everybody works in a building together just don't exist anymore. That's not an option for.
Helioscope. I mean, there's like little studios.
Yeah, there's pockets of studios where people get together and work together. It's not like, a company that has a department,
And they're rarely working on the same projects. It's always like, well, we're all collectively working in this space, but we all have our different projects and different publishers and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, which is what my studio here is. It's Brian Stelfreeze and Hoyt Silva and me, and we just share a space, but we don't actually work on the same projects together. Well, technically, Brian and I did work on Black Panther together while we were in the studio, so that was happening. But, anyway,
but be honest, you didn't even talk to each other.
Yeah, no, he's terrible. He's awful.
Like, we're doing the same thing. Shut up. I'm working.
I'm like, oh, Brian's here. It's not even here. I didn't even know. Yeah.
No, but in a big way, you shaped in the Wildstorm. Did you call it by between yourselves? Did you call it Wildstorm Effects or not even?
It was usually just shortened to WSFX, and we do. Wait a minute, I can't even do it. We'd be like Wildstorm. Yeah.
Why am I not surprised? Anyway,
we're a bunch. I mean, it was a bunch of young punk kids who were just, suddenly, picked out from wherever in America and sat down in San Diego, California, to make comic books and live the San Diego, California lifestyle, which we all.
Yeah. And you were the main reason why DC Comics bought Wildstorm.
Absolutely, yeah. They wanted the coloring department.
And whoever doesn't recognize that doesn't know comics. It was
right.
And Paul Levis will tell you to this day, it was the colors. It's, you guys changed, Wildstorm Effects, or what are you going to call it? Like I can do the thing, but that.
Yeah,
you guys changed color art. You changed color comics forever. Alex was telling me the same thing when I had him here, is that you were the guidance that everybody else followed in the future. It wasn't established. There was some guys who knew how to use Photoshop that didn't know how to color.
Correct.
In other companies, and we won't name names, but we all know who we are talking about. Yeah. And you guys showed people you can be an actual artist.
And that's the main thing, was that we went from being essentially production people to developing artists and creating to really elevating what color could be and how it could be done in such a way that the production values can be so much better than they were. And that was all that whole learning curve. A lot of the rough patches that began the early image stuff was pretty rough, and they didn't start with Photoshop. It was started with some of the program called the Cod Barrett system. But when Photoshop became sort of the norm, I think that really sort of paved the way for a lot of colorists to develop as artists themselves. And to stand away from, stand out of the crowd of the pre-digital era and sort of make a name for ourselves. So
did you have to go through Corel Painter and all these others?
Oh gosh, no. I tried Painter once. I tried it once.
And you ran away.
It was the most dense program, and I'm saying that coming from Photoshop. Corel Painter was so dense that I was working on. I actually got offered to do a cover, not just color it, but to actually create a cover. It was one of the releases of one of the Wolverine movies. There were all these alternate covers in classic art styles, or very famous painter styles. And I really, really wanted to do Van Gogh. I love Vincent Van Gogh. I love his color style. I love the work he has. So I tried Painter because I had to get those brush strokes right, and Photoshop didn't have that capability at the time. I think I developed one brush in Painter, and I used that one brush because I couldn't figure out anything else in there. And then I would get mad at it and shut it down and go back into Photoshop and do stuff. It was the most frustrating thing. And of course, now we've got, what have we got? We've got Procreate, we've got Clip Studio, we've got all these amazing painting programs that and even Photoshop has developed all these, or Adobe has developed all these different painting systems with these different, you know, ink and watercolor and gouache, you know, painting styles that just blow my mind compared to what was available even just 10 years ago.
Well,
it's amazing.
As I always say, to put people in perspective, when I started, you know, working in comics from Spain to the United States, everything was done by fax, and I didn't have a fax machine. I have to go to the only to completely literally that was the only place in town, the only newsstand place that had a fax. And I had to stay there, and it was like 18 or something like that, like this until the fax came back from Marvel or whoever. And the guy, you know, I was like just buying shit from him that I didn't want to have excuse to stay there. You know, and we don't have a Starbucks, you know, in newsstand places like this in America. It was just a store who sold newspapers, but he had a fax. So I had to be there like, okay, I'm going to buy that magazine. What do you want? Hello? That's, hello, that's, like a socialite. And I don't give a shit. I just give me your money. So you don't throw me away. And finally the guy was like, you know what? I will call you when the fax come back. So I had to go, 30 minutes from home to that place for like 2 or 3 times a day. And, and guys like Walter or Howard or the others always remind me of, you think that stuff? I had to go to the bus station.
Yes.
Give the pages to the bus driver who could take it to another state. You don't know the story with Howard and
no, I haven't heard this one. No.
Howard always had to go to the bus station in New York, give the pages to the bus driver and give him some money. So the guy made him the favor.
Yeah.
The pages to Ken Brusenak, his all-time letterer.
Yeah.
He could letter them all, get the pages back to the bus driver, get them back to New York, and Howard would take the pages.
Wow! Oh my goodness, that's
so every time I think I had it tough with the fax, I think like I didn't have to go to the bus station and send pages and cross my fingers so the pages weren't stolen, broken, or anything, because that was the thing he had to send the pages to his letter.
Yeah. Wow! Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
How important it is to know color theory, and how important it is to be able to say, screw it, I'm not going to follow it. Kelly?
You'll go first.
Why me?
Okay, Ruth.
I think it's great to know it, and then you can disregard it later, but I think that it's really important to at least have a basic understanding of it, even if it's a lot of it's instinctual. You don't have to sit down and read a book about it, but I think when starting out as a colorist, you should probably be thinking about why is that appealing to me? Why does that look good with that color, and why does this create depth and this doesn't, and that kind of thing. You don't have to be super boring and academic about it, but just thinking about what you're doing at first, and then later on it'll just kind of become more instinctual, and then you can break rules and be creative and do other things. But I think to start with, it's a good idea to really think about why things work or don't.
That's good.
I think especially in regards to how color theory relates to palettes. And whenever I teach it, I always talk about it directly with movies, because people, I think visually showing somebody how it's actually being used instead of just a color wheel is a lot more effective. So people can see oh, okay, this is what, triadic color is. And you show them a Superman movie, it makes it a lot, I think, more accessible.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, understanding what contrast is really the important thing, because you're always looking at the contrast of dark versus light, or the contrast of saturated versus unsaturated, or the contrast of cool versus warm. Knowing that contrast is what makes the palette and what makes the emotional and gives you that emotional impact or that storytelling impact that you want. That's really, if you get that part down, the rest of it just sort of falls into place. That's the magic key that makes the rest of understanding how color works fall into place. And Brian Stelfreeze taught me that one. So that dude knows color theory. If you ever get, I'm serious, if you ever get to a show, and I'm talking to everybody who's in this list too, if you get to a show and you could talk to Brian Stelfreeze, ask him just, what's color theory? And just play dumb for a minute. And just sit back.
I have him here.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
And we were talking about color, and we were for like 3 hours just
Oh
japping.
yeah.
And he was all the time. He was like, "David, my friend, do you really want to go this deep into it?" And I was like, "Brian, that's why I do this show. This is why. This is not a regular show. It's to know you and then to know how you work. This is for, as we call say in Spain, when we say there's something for people who really wants to know, we say it's muy cafetero. For people who really likes coffee.
Yeah. Okay.
For connoisseurs. So that's why I like to do it. And with Brian, it was the same. And he was like, "Are you serious? You want to do it this way?" Like, go. If somebody leaves because they get bored, I don't care. This is what I want people to understand how it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's excellent at describing it to even people who are not artists.
Absolutely.
To make them understand it. Because, like you said, there is an instinct. A lot of colorists have and same with other artists in our field. There's an instinct. We follow our instincts, but there's a theory behind that instinct. And for those who don't have the instinct, they can learn this. They can actually pick this up. Mm-hmm. And it's teachers like Brian, or I learned from Joe Chido, who was the main guy who did all the color guides at Wildstorm. His sense of color theory was very strong, and his sense of contrast between light and dark and cool and warm was incredible. And that's how, that's who I learned from. But I could see what was going on the page and understand it on a visceral level. I couldn't explain it. Once I learned more about color theory, then I could explain it better. I could say, oh, this is why purple and yellow are doing this. Why I want this thing to be in the foreground, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, if you ever just, want 3 hours of complete education, just ask Brian about color theory.
Just sit down with him and let him talk. That's what
just let him talk. He may offend you. He likes doing that sometimes. He likes pushing buttons. But he's one of my favorite humans in the world.
Except if Sting is around. If she's around.
Oh, if Sting's around, she'll keep him in check. Absolutely.
Yes, that's what I mean. It's like no, Brian is like, he keeps serious. It's like, Brian, Sting is not in camera, but she's there, right? Like, how do you know? Like,
really pro approach of like just playing dumb, even though you know the answers.
Yeah. You're like, so tell me about color theory.
Yeah. What's a color wheel?
What's the color wheel?
Kelly, I saw you grab a couple books.
I did. So I think this book is kind of like everybody's like your go-to book. It's got like interesting palettes, and it's got the CMYK and the RGB codes in it. And this one, I don't think a lot of people know about. I ran around it at Powell's in Portland, and it rules. And it goes by years of like types of palettes. And it shows like different posters and stuff too. So it's really cool. Yeah. Also has the CMYK color codes on it. But
nice. That's awesome.
It's really cool. I'll show you one other page on here so you get an idea. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's really neat.
So
I haven't opened it in so long. I should probably.
Yeah, I know. This is if I'm really, really stuck. But normally, I think we all kind of have like instinctual, like preferences for things. Yeah. But also, I'll look at every time I start with a new artist, I'll look at how if they colored themselves before. I'll look at that, and I look at how other people have colored them, and I kind of pick and choose what I like of what other people have done. Because also that means that it's more likely that the person I'm working with is going to kind of like what I'm doing, or like an aspect of what I'm doing, because it's kind of the style that fits their art and what's sort of been done before. Just my version of it.
Yeah.
Kelly, can you please say the name of the book so people can find it?
It's okay. The Designer's Guide to Color Combinations by Leslie Cabarga, Cabarga, and then Color Index by Jim Krause.
No, Color Index, yes, but the name of the other one so people can find it, because I know they're going to ask. Look, Victor Herrera Q, connected to that, asks, can you give us some advice on how to be a great colorist, and which were some of your influences? Laura, you go first.
Wait, I gotta go see. That was in the notes. I didn't see that one. Say that again. I'm sorry. Read that one to me again. For some reason, my
Can
chat.
you give us some advice on how to be a great colorist, and which were some of your influences?
Oh, okay. Well, you can start by being a colorist. Start there. Start by try by coloring a lot. It's funny because I would have, even 5 years ago, I would have said, learn Photoshop, because it was the industry standard. It is no longer the industry standard in terms of producing coloring, but it is still regarded. The Adobe product line is still considered for pre-press the standard. How to be a great colorist, though, is to talk to your artist, have a good working relationship with your team members, understand what they're thinking of when they are drawing their pages. Mm-hmm. And that, because everybody has their own influences, everybody has their favorite artists that they want to pull from and draw from, and hearing their influence will give you the information to continue with that same vision. It also, I can't stress enough how important it is to be open to communication. And I'm not just saying, having this 3-hour chat before you ever start a project or anything, because a lot of times, I'll jump in on a project and it's pretty much just hit the ground running, but I still want to be able to have that dialogue with my artist and say, okay, so, is there anything you like or don't like? Is there, how do you feel about special effects? How do you feel about rendering? Do you want to go painterly with this? Do you want to go graphic? And any bits of information, any references that they used on the pages, if they want to send it to me, perfect. That aids me all the more in working with that artist. And I think that open line of communication has taught me a great deal about coloring. Because it has taught me to look at the art that they're influenced by, and to, bring that influence in. When I was working on Wonder Woman, for instance, it was like I was working on Wonder Woman with Liam Sharp, and I was working on Black Panther with Brian Stelfreeze, and the two different art styles couldn't be more different. They were, one was extremely graphic and very, very edgy and sharp, and the other one was very luscious and very much influenced by the great fantasy painters. So I was bouncing between these two styles, and my color choices, I still stuck with palettes that I was comfortable with. The sort of the standard reds and blues and yellows and greens that I lean toward, that I lean on heavily, but I would change up my rendering style to fit the art, and that allowed me to have two very, very different projects, even though I'm just one colorist, and should, you would think that one artist has one style, but colorists can be chameleonic like that. So that, I think, helps a colorist to be a better colorist, is to be able to do varying styles of color.
Yeah,
and
versatility is a big tool for colors, right?
Versatility, exactly. I think that's kept me employed, that's for sure. So, when we as colorists tend to have multiple projects at any given time, so we need to be ready to do a project that, may not be in our wheelhouse, and we have to learn something quick. I was recently, I think it was a couple of years ago, I was approached to work on an extremely very, very manga-esque book, and I realized I have no skill with this. This is not my wheelhouse. I am not familiar with this style of art at all. Not for lack of reading, but for lack of ever working on it. And the effects were so beyond the type of effects that I do. And with the zipatone and the craziness and all it was gorgeous, but I was like, what? I can't do this. This is going to take too much of a learning curve. So, but
it's funny to hear you say that, Laura, because that's my wheelhouse, and the stuff not mine.
I was like, what you call is Kelly Fitzpatrick. So I know I know where my limitations are, and even though it would have been I don't know how much fun it would have been for me to actually start from scratch and learn everything there is to know about that particular style, because I feel, somebody who's really into that style is going to know that I'm faking it. So, so I was like, yeah, this is just not for me. I'm sorry. But yeah, I've tried a lot of other different styles and enjoy quite a few of them. But yeah, I think to answer your question, how to be a great colorist is to be versatile and to understand how to be a team player and how to get feedback from your artists as well. Taking criticism, taking corrections, being able to do those corrections on the fly and not taking it personally is a huge thing. So be a team player. That's a big thing. I think that's my advice.
Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, Laura covered it for sure. And I think we also have a bit of an advantage. I know sometimes I'll get a note back and I'll be like, what? I disagree with this strongly. And you can make your case. And then if there's pushback, then again, a second time from the artist or editor, and you can't convince them, you just kind of have to do it. And that's where I think the benefit of working distanced is a computer. You can be like, this is bullshit. Then be like, okay, thank you for your note. I will take that into consideration. Take that edit now. Thank you. And sometimes you just have to suck it up. But yeah, I think it's a combination of just being receptive to criticism, not taking it personally. And then sometimes if you genuinely super believe that it's the incorrect creative decision, just calmly making your argument for why you think it's the creative decision.
Say, this is what I was thinking when I did this, and that's cool that we sort of missed the mark. But is that okay that I missed the mark? It's sometimes you just don't have the same page, and that's fine. So it happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but other than that, I think Laura totally covered it. Just being flexible, working with the other person. It's not they did it, now they've washed their hands of it and they never want to see it again. I mean, I'm sure there's a little of that behind the scenes.
A little bit of that, yeah.
I'm sure really they would love to be involved in the next step of the process, which is the coloring.
Yeah. Let me ask you to this. How often do you work with artists who do color themselves? Do you find that to be a regular thing with the artists that you work with, or do you find that to be not the norm?
I feel like it's 30 or 40% of artists who have colored themselves in the past or do it on other books, for example, an image book or something, and then they have very strong feelings about how they're to be colored.
Right.
Is my general experience of artists who are also colorists. And sometimes they have wonderful ideas, and then sometimes they can be a little stuck in their rut, and you kind of have to be like, well, this is really cool. What if we tried this?
Right.
And then see how that goes. I don't know what it's been like in your experience, but I think it adds another level of complexity to the relationship between the artist and the colorist when they have a lot of opinions, but it's also good because it means you can also try new things that you wouldn't have thought to try on that kind of work as well.
True. Kelly?
I'd say it's 20% of people color themselves. A lot of the people that I work with, well, I've been working still with a lot of people I've never worked with before. I don't know if it's the same with you guys, but I've basically moved into graphic novels.
Okay.
Almost everything I'm doing are long-term projects that are take me 3 or 4 months to color. Because they're 200 something pages, right? And so for me, I don't know. I think a lot of the people color themselves with their sketches, pinups, commissions and stuff like that. But they don't color themselves sequentially. They've never colored themselves sequentially. I occasionally I'll get feedback of, I liked it when so-and-so colored me. Can you, but I know you color similarly. Can you, reference this style? But a lot of times it's just I ask people for what do they like? What are they influenced by? Whatever. And they don't have a lot of opinions. They're just I like what you do it.
I do get put on the spot sometimes. They're like, I don't know. And then it's only afterwards they're like, oh yeah, I really like this, that, and the other. And then they think of that when you finally handed the pages.
Yeah. I a lot of times I'll get more notes from like editorial than I do artists.
Same. That happens a lot.
Yeah. Sometimes writers too. A lot of times I'll get notes back from writers about stuff.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes writers have had enough distance from the project because they wrote the script ages ago that then when they see the colors, they're like, oh, I'm full of creative juices again and ready to talk about stuff. And I'm like, okay, slow down.
That's so funny. I never thought about that. You're right. Oh my gosh.
But it's also about, depending on the artist. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ruth, but I think you colored one of my guys, Jesus Scythe, for Marvel in a couple projects.
Yeah.
And the editors he usually colors himself. But in this case, he wasn't. And the editors kept asking, for Ruth to, I won't say swipe, but it's similar to his style. And he kept saying, no, don't color like me. Color like yourself. I can color myself as myself. If somebody else is coloring me, I don't want them to look like me. I want them to look like they want to do it. It's their art. To the editors, like Jesus prefers that it doesn't look as much as he could do it. He wants her to have her own freedom and her own style. Oh, but we want it to look like him. Like, then give us a couple more months so he can color it.
Exactly.
So you're going to have both things at the same time. So it's really weird sometimes, because the artist doesn't want it to look like him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Yeah, that was an example of where I encountered it, where the artist had a previously established style and didn't want it, and then some that have previously established styles and they want to keep it. So it kind of really depends on the artist's preference, and then editorial has a big say on what the book looks like, because they also have the selling point of, well, this is what his work looked like and it's familiar to people and now they want more of that, but with our characters.
Sure. Yeah.
Drink and Draw Costa Rica tells you, Laura, about Cassidy and Hitch. They rarely use other colorists. What is it that they appreciate the most from your work that they won't find in anyone else? How do you fit in their work process? You should ask them. I'm kidding.
Ask them. Well, it's funny because I've worked with Brian Hitch off and on. We haven't had an ongoing, completely unified relationship. So he's had a lot of other colorists work on his stuff, and I think the big thing that I come away with Brian is, first of all, Brian is at least partially, if not completely, colorblind. I don't remember. So he really loves contrast, which is another reason why, when he likes seeing a lot of, really bright brights and really dark darks. There's a colorist that I don't know if he's colored Brian, but he should. Marte Gracia should color Brian, because Marte's sense of contrast is so amazing. But anyway, so that's where Brian's focus is when it comes to coloring. Is he doesn't want. He actually pushed me really hard on the authority to get away from natural colors. He was like, this isn't a naturally colored book. This needs to be completely surrealistic. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's try that. So that's when I was really.
I can imagine you like, oh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, so we're gonna do something called limited palette. Oh, okay. Do it, So I learned a great deal about really shifting away from natural life colors when I was working with Brian. With Cassidy, he has very specific things in mind. He has colored himself on occasion, and he certainly does a lot of Photoshop work on his own covers and stuff. And I have learned very, very much to ask him what he has in mind before I begin, because oddly enough, even though I've worked with him for 20-something years, worked with him on various projects across the board, I still can't always predict what he wants. So I can guess, and about 75% of the time I'm right. But I would rather just drop him a line, hey, John, just got this cover, got any ideas on it? And then he'll go, oh, yeah, here's what I'm thinking, or here's the the piece of classic art that I referenced for this, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was there. Great, thank you, Brett. It's exactly what I need. So yeah, again, I think it just really comes down to communication and to be try as much to be on the same page, knowing that you're never going to be, because I can't be in their heads. I'm not Brian. I am not John. I am a different human with a different perception of color and storytelling. So communication, again, that is the biggest thing, and it's the same with any artist, really.
But even more than Brian, it would be Olivier, right? Coipel.
Right. Yeah. Like it's funny because when I started working with Olivier on Thor, I was familiar with the previous books that he'd done. But I sort of went into it just completely, without a lot of direction from him, other than the sort of global idea of this is what basic information like that. And it's so interesting because when I color Olivier now, I'm so very aware of how he colors himself, which is very painterly. It's a completely different palette than I would ever use. And it's interesting to me too that Olivier's work can stand up to so many different coloring styles. When Dave McCaig colors him, he colors him in that sort of very flat style, very rich, sumptuous colors, but a very flat rendering style. I tend to do more airbrushing and more cut grad with him, and more modeling. And then, when he paints himself, he's painting it. So he's got this very saturated palette that he likes.
Somebody's trying to get into my house and kill me, just so you know.
Oh,
what the fuck? But anyway, I was just, where's it coming from? I'm suddenly like, oh,
it's you.
Let me, in case.
Yeah.
Yes. Never too careful. Anyway,
that's right.
Candro Costa Rica says, Kelly, do you have a different approach when doing covers than when you do internal interior pages? Does it change for you, and how?
Yes. Well, the first thing is production. Even like I don't typically for my covers, I flat them myself. I don't pay for somebody to flat them unless it's like really crazy. Like there was one Supergirl being super cover. That's like the first thing that comes to mind, where there were all these like tubes and stuff, and I was like, so I paid for flatter for that. But I spend more time on them. A lot of times, typically they're more rendered, or they have like more kind of like special effects coloring on them. I tend to spend more time on them than I do the pages. So I mean, I guess that also I think about like what is going to stand out on like a stand when you're like looking in a store. So I tend to use like bolder colors because a lot of people will say that like my palettes are more muted. Like it's hard. I mean, aside from shade, it's really hard for me to go super saturated with my colors. But on covers, I tend to go more saturated. Also, I'll look at like the top covers that have come out of the month a lot of times. I'll be like, okay, what is everybody else doing? And then like, and what do I think is working? And then like, what is going to stand out from that? So I do a lot of weird research.
You do homework.
My Google image searches are so weird.
That's awesome.
Let me ask you this to all of you. When you do a cover, do you think more of it? You forget it's a comic and you try to think about it as an illustration, as a painting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah. Well, it's a standalone image, so it is an illustration. It's not a sequential page. It's a different type of art. So and like Kelly said, it's you do put more hours into it because you want it to be, you want it to be amazing. You want it to be finished. You want it to be you stand out on the stands and stand on the stands. So it's definitely a different approach than interior pages for sure.
Yeah. So now you're making me think of how neat it could be if someone designed a comic book where the cover was the first page of the story.
Oh,
that would be interesting.
That had to have been done. Somebody's had to have done that.
Someone had to have done it, but I can't. And I don't think anyone's done it recently. I feel like that probably would have been an older technique in like the 60s and stuff.
Right.
Like those romance comics I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Of like they're like, well, Brad is leaving, and then it proceeds with why Brad is leaving.
Right.
If that's been known, probably Stan and Jack did it sometime in Fantastic Four or any of them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because they went crazy and create something crazy every issue like 3 times. So
romance comics come back, like that would rule. I would love to.
I've been saying for this is 152, and people think I'm kidding. Every time I repeat, one of the big things we need for comics to grow in the real world audience, out of the the diamond cuts and all that thing, the ghetto. Let me be honest. We need romance comics to come back.
I agree.
I'm not kidding. It's a big thing. Sure. It's a big market that is there.
Yeah.
And a certain kind of readership needs those comics.
Yes.
A certain time in their life. It's just like that.
Yep.
Yeah. And I wonder if you think like trashy romance, because like I feel like there's a lot of very what I would call soft romance books out there in the scene. Just like, I have all these feelings and I'm going to sit and ponder my feelings as I think about this person. But I definitely think there could be a revival of like more trashy romance. That'd be fun.
Right.
But I think they can be. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course, and send me to hell if you don't agree. You're more than me, so you can do it. Just responding to me. But I think that they can coexist at the same time for different. I think that soft romance can be for younger.
Yeah, sure.
And then trashy, when you're 18 to posting or whatever you want to call it. Young adult and all that. Trashy is more when you're a bit older. You're like, I don't give a shit about that. Oh, I love that. I just want to talk about screwing you, getting you in the front of the car, and just fucking the back.
Like Love Island or whatever. Like I want like real like reality TV like trash.
Yeah.
That would rule. I want that. I want like sports comics to become a thing in the US. Like I want more variety. I want more westerns to like I love westerns because you get to paint like these amazing skies.
I love painting. I want to do an underwater comic. I don't care what the story is. I just want to do an underwater comic because I want that power,
I would love to see that too.
Or comics about national parks. I don't know, anything like that sort of stuff that's where I want to be.
I know. I'm always looking out for the synthwave comic of my dreams. Like
right there you go. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, realist comics, like I love that. I love them. I love making them.
Yeah.
Something weird with the world when you think that the most important novels about westerns were written by a German guy who never was in the US, Karl May, and the most important Western comic was done by Jean Giraud, and it's called Lieutenant Blueberry in France.
Right. Yeah, of course.
That's why I always say there's something wrong in comics when you have the westerns.
That aren't even produced by
even in America or for Americans. So we have to fix that. Kelly's right. Westerns.
Yes.
Yep. Big westerns and romance comics and trashy. Okay, we're all covering and underwater. Yes, we have to cover it. Drink and Joe Costa Rica says, "Oh, and everybody, guys, go fund Kelly."
I have a GoFundMe right now for my medical bills. I have fibromyalgia, so like that was a big reason of moving to Canada is like getting the healthcare that I need. So you probably notice I'm fidgeting a lot. It's the pain dance.
as like the ladies at my who run the drugstore near me call it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So good. So you heard it, guys. Help in every way you can. Okay.
You're down there. There you are. Okay.
But
I'm going to Kelly's screen now. So
my screen, Kelly is there in my screen.
Oh my god!
That's why every time she asks why I'm first, is that the first person I see is in my row is here. Anyway, so I will just read it. No, anyway. Most funnest entertainment has. I gave Laura her Wildstorm test. She killed it.
That was Jeremy Cox. That is Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy.
Just so you know, guys, most funnest entertainment is Jeremy Cox. Identify yourself, Jeremy, please.
I know, right? No, he likes to go by most funnest. He's
okay, Patrick Pascal says what? How come that is not a comic? You mean about Alex Sinclair? That's because it's called Private Life. We tend to call it that, you know. And Laura was the first colored I ever commissioned. I was on a Brett Booth, Thor and Steve piece, and I wanted Mark Morales inks and Laura colors.
Yep, I did that. Thank you.
Yes, but that story with the bus was Howard Chaykin. Yes. Trish is telling you, Laura, I need lessons from Brian.
Yeah, no, you don't, Trish. You're doing fine. Trust me.
I kind of think she doesn't need it, but
that's But you know what? Everybody, you can either okay, you don't need lessons, or just listen to Brian.
Yeah.
Because everybody.
You guys know I flatted for Trish back in the day.
No, that's pretty awesome. There you go.
That's cool.
Nice.
That's cool.
We just so you know, guys, we're watching for a show in YouTube that is called Listen to Brian.
Yes, there you go. Just listen to Brian. And I know right now I can hear my friend Michelle, who is Brian's assistant, be like, "Don't listen to Brian. I have to listen to him all the time." So I could totally see her face right now. Yeah. And I'm sure, like the other studio guys that he's had, like Cully Hamner and Adam Hughes and all those guys, they're all like, "Don't listen to Brian. God, what are you talking?"
Mark Lewis, as he answers Trish, saying, replying to Trish Mulvihill, you don't need lessons.
Yeah.
It's not about lessons. It's about just letting Brian speak and think.
Yeah.
We let him think we're listening.
Yeah.
It's like the case, like, yeah, Brian, yeah. So he has to think that's something else.
Brian's story.
What?
Yep, sorry, go ahead. What?
Oh, sorry. I was saying, I'm going back over stuff you already know can add a new perspective to it.
There you go. Exactly. Funny Brian story. When he was offered Black Panther, he asked for me as a colorist, and the editors hemmed and hawed on that for quite a while. And he stuck to his guns, and finally he got me on the book. And he was telling me about all the negotiations on trying to find a different colorist other than me on him. And he was just like, "No, Laura has to do it." And I'm like, "Okay, so now that I'm on it, let's sit down, grab some lunch. We'll go to a Thai place. We'll sit down. We'll talk about coloring Black Panther." And we did. We went to a Thai place and we sat down and we got our tea and we got our whatever. And I said, "Okay, so tell me how you would like me to approach Black Panther." And he was like, "I'm not going to tell you a thing." He's like, he was like, "I am not going to tell you anything at all. I will not tell you anything." And I'm like, I'm on my own in front of Brian Stelfreeze. Holy shit. I have to color Brian Stelfreeze with no help from Brian Stelfreeze.
To his guns, did he not tell you anything during the whole thing, or he did?
He did. Well, we of course, he wouldn't give me any guidance ahead of time, but there was a lot of information in the script. Ta-Nehisi wrote a lot of information and did a lot of world building for his run on the series. So there was enough information that both of us were learning from the script. And when I would take things, like there was this one weird dream sequence that he had drawn basically just these outlines of the figures and some smoky bits. And I had no idea what to do with it, but I knew if I went and asked him, he wouldn't answer me. So I just came up with some weird green mystical hoo-ha. And he looked at the page and he was like, "Huh, I never would have done that." And I was like, "Oh God, this is very hard." he's like, "I love it. It's great. I never would have thought to do that." And I was like, Okay, so I guess I can trust my instincts a little bit now.
I love it when that happens. Like it feels so good. You feel like you've like done something that like they wouldn't have expected, but then they love. It's
And it's like, it's super. You're like, I'm surprised you love it because for my, most of my career, I'm like, I want to be on the same page as the artist. I want to be able to do what, I want to extend their vision that they've already put on the page. But yeah, if I can surprise somebody, it's also like, I got it right. It's awesome.
And it also, as you said, it also helps you, Kelly and Ruth. It also helps you to trust your instincts, right? That sometimes it's just I just have to follow my gut.
Yes,
for sure.
The first like 3 pages of coloring a project with somebody I haven't worked with are terrifying to me.
Yes.
I'll spend like all day coloring one page.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like the first page of a project because I'm like, oh my God, like I have to make this perfect and I hope they like it. And what if they don't like it?
Yeah.
So I'll spend like 3 pages and be like, what do you think? I'm always terrified.
I'm shouting out to Hank Jones, who was my assistant for a little bit, my flatter, and he is going on to color some amazing work. So hey, Hank, and welcome to the colorist party, dude. We love you. Love having you here.
He's saying for the rest of you who are not reading, I would love for romance comics to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody would, except for editors.
Yeah.
They don't sell.
They
don't sell. Comics don't sell. Romance comics don't sell.
Yeah,
well, yeah, but that's like editors saying for the past 15 fucking years after until they saw Reinald Tegelmeier or Dogman, comics for kids don't sell.
Right.
If you don't give them what they want, of course they're not gonna buy it.
Well, the beautiful thing is that there's so much available online now. I mean, that you don't have to go through Diamond distribution and be put into a shop anymore. That's the beautiful part of streaming comics, that you can do any number of things and have millions and millions of readers, and it's a whole new world. And I love, not whole new world, it's been around for a little bit, but yeah, it's the fact that comic artists are no longer tied to that particular insular system of distribution is so freeing. And when I got onto Webtoons, I was late. I was a latecomer to Webtoons. I wasn't even really aware it was there until like everybody else was talking about it. I'm a late bloomer on a lot of things. So when I finally dove in, I was like, oh my God, there are tons and tons and tons of things on here that I am going to bookmark and read and bookmark and read and bookmark and read. And it just made me super excited to see that, that there are romance comics. There are these cool monster comics. There are these cool Western comics. There's comedy comics. Who does comedy comics? There's no comedy comics, So it was just like, oh, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new distribution system. It's not tied to the 11x17 page any longer. It's just fun to see this new frontier in digital comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like gothic romance on there too. It's really great.
Yeah. And some of it's great, and some of it's yeah.
I feel like I was late to Webtoons too, because like I was familiar with all like the Hiveworks, the whole like Hiveworks community, and like there's various people that I know in the webcomics community, like Danielle Corsetto and like Eric Owen and like the big name people. But it's so weird how separate like webcomics is compared to like print comics. And I feel like as time has been going on, they're really merging, especially with Kickstarter. So because it feels like there's less gatekeeping going on.
Yes. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Absolutely.
Well, I get to see how it lives in the wild.
Whoa, we've got
There's a reason Ruth was talking about Westerns.
Yeah. What about rural Canada? Can we do that?
Right? Oh my God.
We
You know,
need,
I always
we need you to put on your cowboy hat, please.
yeah.
Frank.
That's Alberta. That's Kelly.
Yeah.
You cow around in Alberta.
So I live right
I've
next to,
never,
like,
I've never lived north of Washington, D.C., so the experience of that level of cold is completely foreign to me. I've lived in sub-Saharan and Saharan and
It's been
temperate zones all my life.
degrees Celsius the last few days.
This
Yeah.
winter has been mild. In Fahrenheit, last year there was a cold snap and it got down to -18 Fahrenheit, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" Like,
Oh my goodness.
it's so cold when you walk outside last winter that you would feel like the hair in your nose freeze before the
Yeah.
cold, and you'd be like, why do I feel all the hair in my nose? Because you feel moisture when you're breathing, and it was so freaky. So you go outside, you don't feel cold, your nose hairs would freeze, and then you would be like, oh, I'm cold. Like, it would just hit you all of a sudden. It was so weird.
Hello, everybody. You came here to talk about coloring comics. You are leaving knowing about when your hair in your nose.
I want a place where my nose hairs freeze. That's what I want to do when the pandemic is over. I want my nose hairs to freeze. I feel that.
I would recommend it. I think it's quite an exhilarating thing.
I have a guest room. Feel free. That's never been used because it's free. But yeah, like, I really want to explore the city. I'm super excited about exploring the city and like the mountains and
yeah. That's awesome.
Hey, Alvarez says, hi everyone. How does the ink work affect color work? I mean, when do you feel you have a space enough to create effects, atmospheres, and so on? Thank you.
That's a really good question. Y'all talk.
Ruth.
Oh, that's raw.
I am not going to say Kelly first because he gets offended.
I mean, that's so broad. Yes, absolutely. The inks will affect what you can and can't do on a book. Like, not only just for like practical reasons, like, well, this artist doesn't like closing lines, or just their backgrounds are really abstract, so obviously I'm not going to do highly rendered trees. And then also just like what looks good on them. But yeah, I think that the art affects it drastically, but I don't know, without pointing at examples, that I could say like, oh well, this one I couldn't do X, Y, or Z. But generally in my experience, the more close to realism the inks are, the kind of flashier you can get with effects. And then when it's more broken down or more abstracted, then you're relying more on color to express, like just basic color palettes to express what you want to get across without like going into high rendering. This is my experience of it. But I'm sure you guys have thoughts on that.
Kelly, you go ahead.
It's not only me.
I agree with Ruth. And
Ruth, come away.
I think like it also depends on the tone of the book too. But
I'm very mad at my cat for not being in here.
But yeah, I mean, I think too, obviously, like it's not just like, it's like the artist, right? Because stuff with like thin lines and gray washes, you're gonna color totally different than something with like thick bold lines. I think too, also again, looking at how people color themselves or how they've been colored in the past, like it really shows like, well, sometimes though, when you look at stuff that's been colored in the past, it's like real not great. Sometimes. You're like, yikes, how did this get printed? It also it super depends on I think on the tone of the book too.
Yeah. I know that there's a heavy risk of overpowering the inks with color by simply just going too dark. That can blur the lines, literally blur the lines in print. And I still have to. I'm totally from a print background, so I know there are because the color range is a lot bigger on digital comics as an RGB color range. So you can get away with those super dark, beautiful, rich purples and stuff that you just can't do in print because they'll die in print. But yeah, I mean, there's, you don't want to overstep. I was always taught to never overstep the inks or to never go past a certain darkness, because that there's like a cutoff between where the color has to not go too dark and not interfere with the inks. So I tend to, that's part of my color language now, although I am working darker than I used to. Some colors have like a specific ink limit that they will not go past. And I think I broke that rule years ago. I was like, whatever. But yeah, I think it's funny because sometimes you'll get somebody who's a very detailed inker who gets, who puts a lot of work on the page and gets a lot of shading in there and and you're like, oh, good, I have to do less. That's great, because the brain's already done all the work. And then you go in there and you start noodling and you're like, oh God, I'm noodling. I'm doing as much as they are. Oh crap. So, which is what I'm literally staring at a page that I'm doing this on right now. So I have to go back and go a little simpler colors. But I find the pages that are inked very open to be more troublesome, because I have to make more of the decisions about lighting and direction and shades and things like that. It just takes a little more of a process to think about the blocking of the scene in color. Whereas with pages that are heavily rendered in ink, that I already know where all the shadows are. The inker has told me everything I need to know about where the light source is. So I just run with that plan, and that's usually much easier for me to dive in and work fast on. I always want to include the inker in my conversations too. With they're part of the team. They've done the work. The part that is actually seen on the page is the inks, not the pencils. So they've had a great amount of input on the art. So I want them to tell me too, like, how do you feel about glows? How do you feel about blur effects? How do you want me to do this? Do you want me to back away and let the inks speak for themselves? How much can I knock things out? When I say knock things out, I mean change the line art to a color. Because I play that trick a whole lot for atmospheric effects. So I want to make sure that I'm not stepping on any toes and destroying line art that, somebody worked really hard on. So, so that's, it's all part of the package of respecting the team and being a part of the team and understanding, where your job begins and where their job ends. I had an interesting experience recently where I actually, I didn't get to ink something, but I did. Wade Von Graubadger contacted me. He lives here in Atlanta now, and he contacted me and asked if I knew anybody who could just fill in some blacks for him. He had like a stack of pages that needed to blacks filled in, and he hadn't done it yet. And I was like, really? Because I don't ever see the original art anymore. I see scans. We all see scans. That's all we ever get. So, so on a fluke, I was like, I'll take some of those pages. I've never picked up a brush or, I've never inked anything with a brush or a pen in my life. I have, and it's been terrible. So let's try it, and he was kind enough to let me play around with I think it was like 19 pages of this one issue of, I can't even tell you what the issue was. Justice League? Anyway, it was a Ryan Sook issue. And it was interesting because I suddenly had to stop and go, okay, wait a minute. What is this shape? What does it mean? And why does it have X's in it? They're like, fill this part in here. This is the X. And I also learned how to do black with stars, which is really, and I never realized the way Wade does them is he uses Frisket and does the spatter thing, right? And then inks over the Frisket and then picks up the Frisket against the stars. But then he goes back in and actually paints in the stars so they don't look so much like a screen, because the flicking of the Frisket can get very, very regular pattern, He
doesn't do it with a toothbrush.
He does. And I did. And it was totally fun. And I got my hands dirty and I actually got to like touch artwork and do things on the art board, which was just, it was so much fun. But I'm also in awe of inkers because their interpretations of the lines are just, it's amazing to see them work and see how they interpret the storytelling in the lines, because sometimes the pencils are so vague and they really bring, like, they total out the storytelling, and it is just, it's an art form I appreciate and do not have the capacity to understand yet. So it's amazing, and I love watching inkers ink. It's just like, there's no undo button, there's no eraser. How are you working like that?
Serious business.
White ink is your friend.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Brisket, I've always just seen everybody do white ink over top of the black ink.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's how I thought Black with Stars was done. And now I find out that no, Wade has this other technique, and I learned it, and I have samples. Wait, let me find my book.
Oh, go for it.
Because I did. Because of course I wasn't just gonna go jump on the page and start doing it. So so there's some of my Black with Stars.
Nice.
There it is. And I also tried Frisket with the marker over it, but the marker went through because this is just crappy sketch paper. So
yeah. Cool.
But yeah, Frisket is a whole new thing. Now there's a whole new world of reverse images. Oh my God. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Drink and Draw asks you, Ruth, I've seen your work in 3 different publishers. I know there are more, but which one gives you more creative freedom?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of dependent on both the publisher and the editor, because like the publisher will have like, sometimes they have like a standardized, like, we like it this way or we don't like it this way. I honestly feel like one of the publishers that has given me the most freedom over the years was Marvel. And Valiant gives me a lot of freedom now. And then I've had other publishers that were quite, not restrictive, but like they would give so many notes, and then it kind of felt like I wasn't being trusted, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that can be a little bit of a drag when someone's just like giving you 17 notes on every page, and then you're like always feel like you're not sure if you're doing the right thing.
Right.
But I found that like for example, a lot of people who aren't in comics, or even who are and don't know colors, would be so surprised to hear that like Marvel doesn't have like a set green Hulk. It's just whatever you think is appropriate for the book that you're doing. So I've always found that they gave me a lot of freedom and stuff. And they also, I never got any complaints about the amount of pink I put in my books when I was at Marvel, which I always enjoyed. Like I remember the Punisher book with Deadpool, where I did like this whole extended fight sequence where I did a pink sky with blue clouds, and not a word of complaint.
That was the book with Peter, right? The Punisher. That was crazy. That was remember, Peter didn't complain at all. He was loving it.
No, everyone was so on board, and I was like, I just loved that I got to do a pink sky in Punisher. It was just,
we literally couldn't believe it was like, wait, they're approving it.
They're
letting her do it. Just
I know. When I handed those pages in specifically, I was like, I feel like I'm pushing the envelope here, but they've been really lenient on how much pink I put in stuff. So I'm gonna see if they let me get away with this too.
That is amazing. I love it. Oh my god.
And also, while we're talking about the notes, let me be honest and blunt as I always am, and that's my problem. When an editor gives you 17 notes and is all the time, like making you feel you're not doing their job correctly, I'm sorry, that's not your fault. That's being a bad editor, because if you pick somebody, you need to trust him or trust him, because that's part of the job. Know who to pick for the job, right?
There is that. That's a good point. It kind of does feel like then they should have maybe gone with a different colorist if they just don't like what I'm doing. Because like I always try and accommodate, and like I'll never like, especially if they're giving so many notes, I'm like, okay, I'm obviously doing something that they don't like, so I'm going to keep playing around. But it can feel frustrating when they like approved sample pages, and then they're like giving you a bajillion notes after. I'm like, did you like those sample pages? Because like now you're fighting me a lot, and I don't know why.
Right.
But that doesn't happen too often. So
there's like a big difference too with like somebody giving you notes and making you become a better colorist through those notes, like pushing you to be better, and then somebody just like unloading notes on you page after page after page, and then like I've quit jobs because of that, where I'm just like, you know what, I'm not a good fit for this book. Like I'm really sorry, but you're gonna have to go with someone else. You know, there's a certain point where it's just not worth it, and like you just feel like, okay, like I've had projects where I feel like I'm fighting with the artist, and like that's just not good. And I don't want that kind of relationship with the people that I'm working with. So
that's true. Yeah, because I definitely, there was a project I worked on where the writer had loads of opinions, and actually the artist never spoke to me. Like I tried to prompt them into saying what they wanted, and they like were just quiet. I think they had a hard time with the writer already, and they were kind of over it. But the writer had so many opinions, but then also kept changing their mind, and then also saying the most vague things like, "Oh well, I don't really like that." I'm like, "Oh, what is it about it you don't like?" And they're like, "I know, I just don't. It's just not working for me. I don't feel it." And I'm like, I can't work with that. It was a short project, thankfully, but I was like, okay, I'm not like a blacklister, but I'm like, that person's, I'm never working with them again. That was awful.
That's where I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please, Laura.
Oh, I was going to say, that's where I think that, you know, there does, when I was working with Virgin Comics for a while there, there was a need for like just a basic vocabulary that we could share between, you know, editors and artists and writers and colorists, so that, you know, if an editor was like, you know, to help editors describe what they want in terms that a colorist can understand, you know, to learn some of the same language, so that we're at least talking about the same thing. So if an editor's like, oh, that's not the right blue on whatever, then they can say, you know, that even the editor understands what a cooler blue is, or you know, this blue is too saturated. Then, you know, there's some understanding of the language that we use, and that we can communicate better. I definitely think there's some, you know, some terminologies and some jargon that could be shared better between the
That
again, we go back to that being part of the job.
You
need to be able to relate and to talk to every single part of your team. You don't know how to talk to a chorus about color being, you know, I need this color to be colder or hotter or less saturated or more, or the gradient, you know. Well, but you know what? That you need to know as an editor is part. You're not a proofreader.
You shouldn't. And that's that also kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier about how much color theory do you need to know. I feel like that's the amount that you need to know, like how to express what you do and don't is important.
You guys, I ran coloring classes last year. I ran 3 of them. 2 of them were open to the public, and 1 was through college. And my second one, an editor actually joined.
Oh, good. No, that's good.
Yeah. And they were like, I need to learn how to talk to colorists better. And I was like, oh my God, this is, and they asked me like, what do you hate like receiving from like editorial, or like what do editors do wrong? And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God. Right.
That's amazing. Who's not working for them right now?
Seriously, that's amazing. That is very cool. That is a very cool editor. So
but that's the way it should be. But that's the way it should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are congratulating the editor, and that's right, because he or she did something to learn.
Yep.
But we shouldn't be congratulating him for doing or her for doing their job.
Knowing
how to talk to your team.
It should be the industry standard. Yeah, that's fair.
It was also like, why did you pay me? We could have just had a conversation.
Right.
That's also true. Just pick up the phone.
Yeah. But
like,
that's
hey,
me too. Yeah.
What? Just so you know, we've been at this for 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Woo! I
And
could probably get back to my deadline.
yeah, you probably need to go back to your life. So, a couple more, and I'll let you go before you kill me. Although,
oh no, not the little bat.
no, anyway, now Jeff, this one. I think I could probably break it. Anyway, have you ever considered, not literally, because I know you're not crazy. I am the crazy one here, so not literally. But have you ever thought about colors like sounds?
I find myself very, like, I guess the word is hourly challenged, where sounds are not part of how I remember things. Like, I remember things very visually, but like, even like, I was talking to my husband, who is a musician, and we were talking about how, like, he'll remember a song or whatever, and then it's just like all in there and he can do it, and I can't. Like, I just cannot connect sounds or remember sounds very well. So for me, no. For me, sounds don't go together, but that's just me.
Kelly?
I mean, I think when you said that, I thought of like synesthesia, where like people.
I'm not talking about that. Yeah, but
that's like what I think of, and I've always thought that's like really fascinating and would be really like cool to experience. But I don't think about it in that way. I think, and like I teach about like psychological aspects of color, so I think about it more from like, a storytelling thing about like what is it doing to like the subconscious. That's
exactly why my question always goes there, because that's the real answer, and like I'm looking for is the psychological aspect, not the. That's why I said not literally, but there's a part when I see red, and for me red is a punch.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, in my head, something.
Yes.
Sorry, Kelly, please.
I definitely have like physiological reactions to colors, but just sound was the one that threw me off. But yeah, I definitely would say that there are physiological responses to color.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And I do make sounds when I color. Does that count?
Yeah.
It all counts. It all counts.
I move my head around a lot when I'm
I do that, and I also go, if I'm like having a gradient around or whatever, I'll do stuff like this. It's ridiculous.
And I will also say that sometimes if I'm listening to a particular album while I'm coloring whenever I listen to that album again, I'll just like flashback. That happened. But that's again visual brain being stronger than my audio brain.
Yep.
Kelly?
Oh, I do relate it to music and music to like memories and stuff like that. But man, I've just been listening to, I watch a Twitch streamer now. I go in like cycles of stuff that I'm listening to. So I've just been watching like a Twitch streamer all day. That's all I do is politics. It's really sad.
Oh man, I can't do politics. I can watch like murder mystery files, whatever, case files, all sorts of crazy ass murder stuff all day long, and it just sits in the background and just runs for hours, and murder after murder after murder. But but yeah, I can't listen to politics.
It's leftist politics, though. It's leftist politics, so it's not.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hank Jones just said something interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. That's what I wanted. Hank says when Ryan Estelfreeze came for a comics forum back in college, he had us listen to a song and make a palette from it. It was a really interesting experiment.
That's cool.
I might try that. That sounds fun.
Yeah, cool. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I wonder what song he had you listen to.
Yeah.
Now I'm super curious.
Really interesting question. But that's why I was asking, all that part about hearing colors or thinking about them as sounds. So it's for me because as a storytelling tool, I always thought that colors are a lot more emotional than let me express it this way. Colors are a lot more emotional or more directly attached to your brain than line art is. Color can create a reaction just by you're looking at the page, and I can do in the bottom right corner of the page, just before the page turn, I can give a little hint of a color.
Yeah.
And even if you don't notice it,
Yeah.
Consciously, I am telling you subconsciously, the moment you move up to the next page, Jack Nicholson is going to be with
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
trying to kill you in The Shining. That's one thing, that colors are such an essential storytelling tool in color in comics, that so many people doesn't realize how essential it is for you to feel the reactions you feel a lot more directly, right?
Yeah,
Yep, exactly.
I definitely think that there's a tier that your subconscious checks in with when they are presented with an image, especially something as complicated as a comic book page, where I think the brain tends to go like values, like light and dark, and then color, and then maybe actual images and words. Some people maybe are hopping around to word bubbles more because there's that contrast, and the brain can zone in. Like, I know what those were like symbols, and then it'll interpret the other symbols. But I definitely think there's like a scale that your brain follows of like, I'm going to assess this information, I'm going to do it in this order. And color is definitely, I think, a little sooner in the like, especially in the emotional realm of what your brain is interpreting, more than like images.
Yep.
And there's also the part of let me say this: if you haven't watched any of these shows, you won't know my theory. But if you haven't, I repeat it often. Say comics is the only art form that can defy Einstein's theory of relativity.
Yeah.
Let me explain why. In any other art form, the arrow of time, as Einstein defines it, it always goes forward.
Right.
In movies, in novels, in anything, in theater. In comics, it doesn't. In comics, you manipulate time and space in any way you want. With the art, you can shape of the panels. That's one. Also, you can do it just by changing a little thing. This is like this, and in the next panel is like this.
Right.
Yeah.
I just said. 5 pages later, maybe I can just say that's why I'm moving time. And with colors, it's a lot more essential. With colors in comics, colors mean every single passing of time. It's with the colors. I can do a round shape and the sky. I'm not saying with the line art anything that's a sky. That can be the moon. That can be the sun.
And boy, you'd better check the script to find out which one it is, or otherwise.
There you go. Which is really funny. Every time I get one script, I helping with the translation or revising it with one of my artists, like the sky, blah blah, and then I put a note for the editor saying, "Oh, just so you know, whoever is the colorist, he's gonna ask when you get the page, he's gonna ask, is it nighttime or daytime?" So I could say, this script needs to be revised. Oh, but in the third panel, it says it because it's happening. Like, no.
No, don't wait till the third page to tell me this. I need to know.
Don't wait until. No, he doesn't have to go. He or she doesn't have to go to the third page to find out. Just put it in the fucking first panel.
Yeah. Write it on the first page.
Not that difficult. But I'm talking about that with the coloring. Do you feel the same way that coloring in comics is also limitless because it completely shapes the time and space? And as I said, there's no arrow of time in comics. You can go this direction, you can go back direction, you can do as Alan and Dave did in Watchmen. I always put that example. Issue 1, Laurie's in the background. It's not important. Issue 5, Laurie's in the foreground, and you suddenly realize, wait, this is exactly the same moment. That they told us about in 5 issues ago. And just moving her in that place, they told us that. How important do you think comics is for that space and time control we have in comics?
It's amazing too that we can manipulate it any way we want. If you have a series of panels, you can color them straight through and just have them be presented visually as normal lighting or whatever. You can do a limited palette and have a completely different psychological approach. You could take one panel and just throw a red on top of it, and suddenly that panel becomes so much more interesting and important to the story. That's the focal point of the story. Suddenly, you can play with foreground, background colors and do weird things that don't happen in normal life, and have a much richer and more interesting visual experience by doing that, and creating the visual experience for the reader by doing that. And And I know there are some colorists out there who do the amazing things with these tricks, and I don't do nearly enough of it. And I sometimes I feel like I'm getting into a rut with my coloring, and I want to be able to jump out at the reader sometimes. So that's, it's one of those things that it has to be agreed upon by the team that you do this sort of storytelling.
Laura, let's call it out. You're talking about Matt Wilson.
Of course I am.
We all know it, but yes.
and
God damn it, Matt Wilson, he's too good.
Wilson, God damn. No, I love him, and we actually did we did a presentation at SCAD quite a few years ago, the two of us together, and I was sitting there listening to him talk, and I'm like, this guy is one of those intuitive guys. He knows this shit from inside out, and and just did the uses of palettes. I have half the time I don't know what he's doing, and I love it, and because it's not the designs I would make, at all, and it just blows my mind. So damn it, Matt Wilson.
I know,
dude. Literally, I've almost picked up one of his books and thrown it across the room.
Yes. How can you break the rules like that, you son of a bitch?
I had that. Like, I wish I would have thought of that. Like,
exactly.
I feel like I peaked as a colorist really early on, because I remember one time when I showed him one of my very first things I colored, and he pointed at something. I was like, "Oh, I wouldn't have thought to do that." I was like, and I've never been as good since. Yeah, like I should have just quit then. I done it.
Exactly.
Just so you know, as an exclusive, because I haven't announced it yet, because I haven't announced next month. But February, let me see what day. February 15, I'm going to have Brad Anderson, Matt Wilson, and Frankie D'Armata.
That'll be a fun crew. Oh boy, that's going to be good.
The gangster.
It's gonna be cool because Frankie is. I've worked in the same cubicle with Frankie at CrossGen, so he'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun.
I don't know if you trust your face now. It's like it'll be fun.
That'll be fun.
Okay, last one before you guys kill me, because it's getting late. Have you ever thought about not only coloring but doing the full thing yourselves, and what's stopping you if you have thought about it? Kelly.
No.
Your face. I just went with you first because you were like,
no. I will never draw sequentially. I thought that's what I wanted to do when I first entered the industry. I'm a painter first and foremost, so like line art is, I mean, I do my own illustration work, but like no sequential. That is not my jam. I keep talking about writing this one book. I feel like everybody used to ask me like, are you gonna write? Are you gonna write? Are you gonna write? Everybody's writing. Like Nathan Fairbairn, Jordi Belair, like all these colorists are writing. Like, are you gonna write? And I would be like, no, I have no stories to tell. Like, I have no desire. Like, I have, like, what am I gonna do? And then I got like way too much into like Marxist-Leninist stuff, and there's a story that I want to tell, but I've been thinking about writing it and like trying to write it since like last November, like not like as in a couple of months ago, as in like over a year. And I've talked to a couple of writers about it, and like sometimes I'm just like, oh, this is too hard to write because it's like talking about stuff that I hate. And like trying to tell a story, and so the writers are like, oh, just like think about the things that you love and like start there. And so I started with like the characters and stuff just recently, but I don't know, it may take me years to actually like put something together just because I don't have a lot of time. I have my time elsewhere and stuff outside of comics, so mainly yoga and my own healthcare stuff, but it's I may write something a long way of saying I may write something.
Yay.
So, don't get too excited though.
I always get excited. I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to see it. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Ruth?
Yeah, I would love to draw a comic. I used to draw comics like before I became a colorist. I went to school for animation. I feel like I'm a pretty competent illustrator. Like, I'm not amazing, but like I can draw. But it's the writing that always pulls me up. I struggle so much to do a script and not second guess it constantly and get it done. So yeah, script writing is not my forte. So yeah, I guess I need to find a writer that wants to work with me. So I should probably just start posting drawings online. But yeah.
There you go.
I think somebody called Fitzpatrick Kelly. I think she's an artist.
I mean, I make my own zines, but they're all like illustrations with stuff. So
yeah, no, I definitely miss drawing and would love to draw a comic, but it's also hard to like not try and script short stories is the hardest to me. And I don't think that trying to launch into drawing a full length series is a great idea for someone who's kind of out of practice for drawing.
Yeah.
Mine would be like a 5-issue thing, I think.
That seems more plausible. Yeah.
Okay. Kelly writes it, you draw it, and Laura edits it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
No,
Laura, do you want to write?
No. I should I'm gonna be the wise old crone sage here and tell you both to don't stop drawing and painting. Don't stop it, because once you stop and you let coloring take over, you'll forget how.
Yeah.
So that's I've been actually like I actually have 2 ideas that I would love to develop. Do I sit down and do them? No, because I am scared to death of them. So
yeah, I know, it's so intimidating with your own thing.
Yeah, you're like, I mean, I am in a professional industry. I'm at the top of my game in this professional industry, and I am deathly afraid of being judged as a penciler, as an inker, as a writer. You know, it's scary as hell, and it has stopped me from doing these projects and that I have had in the back of my head for at least 5. Well, one of them for 4 years, one of them for at least 4 years, not longer. So it's like, yeah, I'm stuck at the I must buy all of the books on how to draw stage because I'm so nervous about putting pencil to paper. So just doing, I mean, literally the last thing I've drawn was the Frisket practice stuff, and I haven't drawn anything in so long since then. And it's like, it's stupid. It's stupid because drawing takes work. It's you have to practice. If you want to be a better artist, you must do art. You can't just write about art. You can't just buy books and let them sit on the shelf about art, because that's not how you freaking do it. So I know that. Do I do art? No.
No, because you let imposter syndrome. You allow imposter syndrome to take over.
So badly, yes.
I felt that too with like drawing, but then like artists in the industry that I like were like talking about how good it was, and so like it made me like continue to draw, because there was like 3 or 4 years where I was just coloring so much that I just stopped drawing, and then I put out like a couple things and people were like, this is good, keep going, and so then I did Inktober's, 2 Inktober's. It just really pushed me. And then recently my friend here who I was talking about earlier, who's in design school, she was like, oh, let's go to the art shop, and we both bought gouache, and I hadn't used gouache for a decade, and like a couple weeks ago I just started like painting like portraits and stuff in gouache, and that was like super fun. So
and you're like, suddenly you're like, why haven't I been doing this all along? And then you beat yourself up. Oh God, why am I terrible?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. You know, I'm going to be like the ghost of years past from now to you.
Yeah, good.
I'm going to remind you every few months. Have you started? Poke. Poke. Have you started to draw? If Kelly's going to be like, poke. Have you started to write? I'm with
Yeah.
you. To draw.
Don't poke Kelly.
Remember, from this day on, I'm going to be your fucking nightmare.
Oh God. What have we done?
I need it though. Yeah.
Oh, she said I need it. Anyway, thank you so much. all of you.
Like coloring becomes a comfort zone.
Yes,
And
yes, I didn't see it. Maury, hey, Maury, how are you? I didn't see you. Preach coloring becomes a comfort zone you don't want to leave. So
Yeah.
yes, do like Mike Chiarello. Do like Mike Chiarello. Keep drawing. Keep drawing. Keep drawing. Don't stop. Don't stop.
He's another one of my heroes.
I won't say why I'm saying this, but Chiarello will be back.
Wow.
Chan, chan, chan,
Excited.
He's awesome.
Back there, you don't see it, but that's if you want to see it, I can take it. There's a page
Yeah,
called Chiarello. It's a Batman Houdini original.
Oh,
Very
nice.
cool.
Nice. Yeah, let me see.
Got it.
Oh,
That's awesome.
Wicked.
Holy crap.
yes.
Beautiful.
That's amazing.
So pretty.
So pretty.
Nice.
I won't tell any of you where I live because I know you will come and see. Fortunately, I live in Spain, so that's easy for me. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Please don't cut because I want to say proper thank you after we're off the live feed, and so you can tell me curse words and insult me as I've deserved. And to all of you, have an amazing weekend. Thank you for being here. We'll be back on Monday with writer amazing Cecil Castellucci.
Yay!
Carolina says everybody enjoyed it. Thank you, Carolina, for watching. Ivan Valladares, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your knowledge. A. Alvarez says, Kelly, Ruth, and Laura, you girls are amazing. And gracias to Señor David. Señor David was my father. Stop. Don't make me that old. And I have and for these unique streams. And Tris over here, beautiful chip painting.
Yep, that's Chiarello. Yep, of course.
Oh, by the way, got mad at me when I told him how I had bought this.
You got mad at me, really?
I could get you something. You're idiot. We're friends for 20 years. And I was like, that's the reason I didn't tell you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And most funniest entertainment, as we all know now, Urami. That was great. Thanks. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Professionals, friends, love you. Big hearts. Have an amazing weekend. And we're off in before I forget. Don't be assholes. Wear your mask.
That's right.
When we're off in 3, 2,